Chapter 168. Even the current number one genius of the martial victory nation, the crown prince of the Martial Victory Institute, Zhiling Tian, wasn't as terrifying as Chu Fengyan. Although Zhiling Tian had soared to the heavens in the past, he wouldn't have been able to fight a peak divine sea realm cultivator with his body refinement realm cultivation base. It was a miracle that only Grand Emperor Richlush could have pulled off if he were alive. Yin Xian isn't an expert, Chu Fengyan said calmly. The primordial brilliant clan was indeed powerful, but Yin Xian's thin bloodline was still far from the true primordial brilliant clan. Moreover, even the true primordial brilliant clan wasn't a match for the primordial war dragon. The primordial brilliant clan could only be considered as the elites among the primordial 100 clans. The primordial war dragon was the supreme overlord of that era. Therefore, Xianyan wasn't a big deal. It wasn't surprising that Chu Fengyan could kill him. Without the Scarlet Flame Sword, Chu Fengyan might have to use some tricks. However, with the Scarlet Flame Sword, killing Xianyan was a piece of cake. Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, Han Yueli felt helpless. Yin Xian could be considered as one of the elites of this generation. Being able to become the leader of the Candle Flame sect, there was no need to doubt his strength. At least, Han Yueli knew that Yin Xian was stronger than her. Although he wouldn't lose to Yin Xian, he couldn't defeat Yin Xian either. If someone else said this, Han Yueli would definitely think that person was arrogant. However, since Chu Fengyan said it, Han Yueli couldn't refute it. Chu Fengyan had just killed Yin Xian with ease, so there was no way to refute his words. You must be careful after killing Yin Xian. Yin Xian is the disciple of the Candle Flame sect's leader. If the news of his death spreads, all the disciples of the Candle Flame sect in the Sacred Land will spare no effort to kill you. Han Yueli reminded from the side. Yin Xian's identity wasn't an ordinary disciple of the Candle Flame sect. The news of his death would definitely spread quickly. At the very least, Han Yueli knew that there were still a few core disciples of the Candle Flame sect in the Sacred Land. Those who were able to enter the core disciples of the four major sects were all martial artists whose strength had reached the wind-resisting realm. Although the peak of the Spirit Sea realm was only one realm away from the wind-controlling realm, as a warrior at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm, Han Yueli knew clearly how big the gap was. Encountering Yin Xian, Han Yueli could still be in an invincible position, but encountering any random wind-controlling realm martial artist, Han Yueli would definitely be defeated within 10 moves. Indeed, if I have not guessed wrongly, those Candle Flame sect's practitioners have already found out about Yin Xian's death. Chu Fengyan said in a low voice. I have to leave this place. A hint of hesitation flashed through Chu Fengyan's eyes, but he still opened his mouth. I wonder if Ms. Han would like to travel together. There was something about this Han Yueli that Chu Fengyan was extremely concerned about. Chu Fengyan wanted to figure out, all right, now that Yin Xian has fallen, it's impossible for me to escape. Han Yueli nodded. The aura of Yin Xian's death was enough to tell who killed Yin Xian. This kind of deduction technique was not difficult for a wind-controlling realm martial artist. Let's go back first. Chu Fengyan did not escape immediately. Instead, with a flash of light, he returned to the place where the battle took place. I wonder how Big Brother Chu is doing. Looking at the direction where Chu Fengyan chased, Hao Lan muttered to herself. It was the second time. She did not expect Chu Fengyan to save her when she encountered danger for the second time. When she saw Chu Fengyan defeating Yin Xian and forcing Yin Xian to flee, Hao Lan could not believe it. In such a short period of time, they thought that their strength had progressed fast enough, but compared to Chu Fengyan, it was simply trash. They had just stepped into the Spirit Sea realm, but Chu Fengyan was already able to defeat a warrior at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm, especially when Chu Fengyan was still in the body refining realm. Was it really possible for a martial artist to surpass more than 10 levels? The current Chu Fengyan was even more monstrous than the previous Chu Fengyan they saw. Don't worry, don't you know Brother Chu's strength? Mo Changhen said calmly. He was clear about Chu Fengyan's means. Since he had chased after Yin Xian, it would not be difficult for Chu Fengyan to escape unscathed even if Yin Xian did not die. Everyone, it's been a long time. A voice could be heard all of a sudden, causing Mo Changhin and his crew to be excited. "Big Brother Chu," Halan said with surprise. "Halan, it's been a long time. You've already reached the Spirit Sea realm in such a short period of time." Chu Fumian laughed loudly as he landed in front of everyone. He glanced at Haolan and said with a smile, "Brother Chu, is Yin Xian dead?" Mo Changhin looked at Chu Fumian and asked, "If Yin Xian did not die, he would always be a hidden danger. With Yin Xian's character, he would definitely take revenge in the future." Chu Fumian was not afraid of him, but Yin Xian could kill the four of them with a single hand. "Yes, I've killed Yin Xian." Chu Fumian nodded and said, "But you can't be careless. The disciples of the Candle Flame sect might have already known about this. It's better for you to hide in the outer region of the sacred grounds. With your strength, even if you don't encounter the disciples of the Candle Flame sect, you'll still be in great danger if you encounter the disciples of other sections." Chu Fumian warned. The Spirit Sea realm was not low in the victorious martial country, but in the sacred grounds, those who could enter were all geniuses. None of them were not geniuses. The third level of the Spirit Sea realm was only the lowest level. They would also be in danger if they encountered the disciples of other sections. The four of them had some friendship with Chu Fumian. Chu Fumian did not want any accidents to happen to the four of them. Hearing Chu Fumian's words, Mo Changhin could not help but reveal a bitter smile. They were in the Spirit Sea realm, so it was strange for Chu Fumian, who was in the body refining realm, to warn them. But with Chu Fumian's strength, he was qualified to do so. Being able to defeat Yin Xian, his strength was considered average in the sacred grounds. He would not be in danger if he encountered other martial artists. Actually, we were originally in the outer region, but there have been some changes in the sacred grounds recently, so we decided to go deeper. But we didn't expect to encounter Yin Xian and the others. Changes? You mean the mausoleum of Grand Emperor Richlush? Han Yueli, who was at the side, suddenly said, "Yes, the mausoleum of Grand Emperor Richlush." Mo Changhin nodded in agreement. Chapter 169. Grand Emperor Richlush's Mausoleum. All of a sudden, Chu Fumian realized why the Richlush stele had reacted as soon as he had entered. Of course, other than Grand Emperor Richlush, the Richlush stele shouldn't have reacted in any way. Clearly, it had sensed something, which was why it had awakened and led Chu Fumian there. Only Grand Emperor Richlush, the founder of the victorious martial nation, could have created all of these things. Haven't there been rumors about Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum for a long time? Decades ago, someone discovered it, but it never caused much of a stir. Han Yueli said, "It wasn't a secret, and all of the disciples from the four great sects knew about it. Decades ago, someone had discovered a mausoleum, which was later confirmed to be Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum. Grand Emperor Richlush was the founding patriarch of the martial victorious kingdom. According to the legends, he had coerced countless other powerful kingdoms into taking over the land he had created. The amount of wealth he had acquired was astronomical, and the rumor had it that his mausoleum contained wealth no less than the national treasury of an entire nation. Unfortunately, the mausoleum was covered with countless warding spells that were impossible to break. Therefore, although everyone knew that the mausoleum was filled with wealth, they could only see it, but not touch it. This piece of news was probably about to die down, so why would it suddenly cause such a huge commotion at this time? Senior Han, you only know part of the story." Mo Changhin looked at Han Yueli respectfully. He knew that Han Yueli was far more important than anyone else. Although he could do whatever he wanted with Chu Fumian, he couldn't do that in front of Han Yueli. It said that the key to open the tomb has appeared. Therefore, the tomb is already undergoing various changes. It's about to be opened. The core disciples of the Martial Victory Academy and the four sects have already joined forces to search for the entrance. Mo Changhin hurriedly explained. "The key? Don't tell me it's the Richlush stele?" Chu Fumian said, "If there was any clue about Grand Emperor Richlush, it would be the Richlush stele in Chu Fumian's possession." "That's right. It said that the Richlush stele came into being, which led to all these changes in the tomb." Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, Mo Changhen looked at Chu Fengyan in surprise. He didn't know where Chu Fengyan had gotten this information from. It's actually true. Although Chu Fengyan's expression didn't change when he heard this news, his heart was already in turmoil. Chu Fengyan had just come to the conclusion that the changes in Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum had something to do with the Rich Lush stele. After all, the Rich Lush stele was a spirit item personally created by Grand Emperor Rich Lush. If there was a key, it would definitely be the Rich Lush stele. Although the news of the Richly Lush stele's appearance has spread, no one knows who has it. However, everyone is guessing that someone must have brought the Richly Lush stele into the Holy Land. That's why such a change occurred. Mo Changhen continued. That's probably just a guess. The news of the Rich Lush stele's appearance must have been intentionally leaked by someone. Otherwise, there's no way they wouldn't know who it was. Hanueli said, rumors like these can't be taken seriously. You guys should just focus on your cultivation and improve yourselves. That's the right way to go. You can't take a fortuitous encounter like this seriously. That's right. We'll return to the outskirts of the Holy Land and continue our cultivation. Mo Changhen said. Initially, he had been a little interested in the matter, but after meeting Yin Xian, he realized that there was nothing he could do. Without strength, everything was meaningless. The most important thing was to improve one's own strength. All right, Chu Fengyan nodded. It wasn't appropriate to get involved in a fight like this. With a thought, 4 jade talismans appeared in Chu Fengyan's hand. Each one of them contained the aura of an ancient battle dragon. These jade talismans were created by me. They contain the full power of my attack. When you're in danger, they'll explode with power. They'll help you out once. As Chu Fengyan spoke, he threw out the 4 jade talismans. The talismans merged with the bodies of Mo Changhen and the other 3. Now, Chu Fengyan gave them the 1,000 Leaves spiritual grass and the 4 jade talismans as compensation. These jade talismans were enough to protect their lives from wind-resisting realm warriors. They were definitely more important than the 1,000 Leaves spiritual grass. Thank you, Brother Chu. Thank you, Brother Chu. The 4 of them quickly expressed their gratitude. They had just witnessed Chu Fengyan's strength. These jade talismans were definitely their life-saving treasures. At least in the outskirts of the Holy Land, no one could kill them. All right, we'll leave now. Chu Fengyan glanced at Hanueli and nodded. 2 rays of light flew towards the depths of the Holy Land. Brother Chu's strength is not something we can catch up with. We thought we could catch up with him with the Emperor Longgrass. But now, it seems that we were too naive. Hao Lan looked at Chu Fengyan with admiration. One day, I'll catch up with Brother Chu. Hao Lan, don't be naive. With Brother Chu's current talent, only the Crown Prince can be his opponent. Yu Zhanqing said with a smile. Let's leave quickly. If we encounter another Yin Xian, no one will be able to save us this time. Yes. The 4 of them went in opposite directions, heading towards the outskirts of the Holy Land. Not long after Yin Xian left, a crimson figure arrived at the place where Yin Xian had fallen. That trash, Yin Xian is dead. The crimson figure looked at his surroundings and frowned. Suddenly, he waved his hand, and a mirror appeared in front of him. The mirror showed the scene from before. Chu Fengyan and Hanueli chased after Yin Xian and killed him. The Scarlet Flame Sword. His eyes were fixed on the Scarlet Flame Sword in Chu Fengyan's hand. The Scarlet Flame Sword appeared again and was brought to the Holy Land by someone. If I can get the Scarlet Flame Sword, I'll have a place in the battle for Rich Lush Great Emperor's tomb. I might even be able to suppress those people. The Scarlet figure muttered to himself. Let's calculate where that kid is. He waved his hand again, and another water mirror image appeared. However, this time, what appeared in the image was the shadow of a dragon. Chapter 170. What? My divination technique has actually been broken by someone? Looking at the water mirror in front of him, the red figure said in shock. This divination technique was the unique ability of warriors above the wind-controlling realm. As long as one had the aura of a warrior, it was enough to divine his past and every move. But now his divination had failed. I don't believe that a little guy in the body-refining realm can escape from my divination technique. The red figure roared angrily. The spiritual energy in his body was mobilized again, condensing a water mirror in front of him. But the moment the water mirror was condensed, it was completely broken. Boom! From the water mirror, a dragon's roar sounded. At the same time, a huge amount of spiritual energy suddenly burst out from the water mirror. It turned into a fist and smashed toward the red figure. What? The red figure did not expect such a sudden change. But after all, he was an expert in the wind-controlling realm. He immediately sensed the danger. In an instant, he came to his senses. A wave of spiritual energy was mobilized in his body, turning into a flame barrier, blocking in front of him. Bang! The fist smashed through. The flame barrier collapsed in an instant. After all, the flame barrier was condensed in a hurry by mobilizing spiritual energy. It could not exert half of its power. Faced with this punch, it was smashed immediately, but it was enough to dissolve most of the power. The remaining power smashed into the crimson figure and forced him to take a few steps back. He barely managed to stop himself as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn kid, I'm going to kill you. I'll kill you completely. In the Holy Land, even if there is no divination, I'll see where you can hide. The red figure roared angrily. As a warrior in the wind-controlling realm, he had never been schemed against to such an extent. Although this punch did not seriously injure him, it had aroused the anger in his heart. His body moved and immediately turned into an escape light and left. At the same time, on the other side, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly stopped in the middle of flying. Han Yueli, who was next to him, could not help but ask, "What happened?" "Someone came to calculate my location," Chu Fengmian said calmly. "What? Someone was calculating?" To be able to deduce the location of a martial artist. Only martial artists whose realm has reached the wind-resisting realm can do it. Could it be that Yin Xian's death has already been known by a wind-resisting realm martial artist? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli exclaimed in shock. If a wind-resisting realm martial artist were to calculate their location and chase after them, it would be difficult for the two of them to escape. In that case, we'd better leave as soon as possible. Now that our location has been divined, there will be people coming very soon, Han Yueli said nervously. She didn't want to face the pursuit of a wind-controlling realm expert. It doesn't matter. I've already broken that person's calculations. Chu Fengmian said, "Do you know which martial artist that crimson figure is?" "That person's eyebrows and hair are all crimson red," Chu Fengmian said. Just now, Chu Fengmian had also discovered the scarlet figure's presence when it was trying to divine his location. Because of this, Chu Fengmian burst out his strength to break that person's calculations and wanted to take the opportunity to injure him severely. However, he was a wind-resisting realm martial artist after all. Chu Fengmian's attack only slightly injured him. If it was a peak divine sea realm martial artist, Chu Fengmian's punch just now would have seriously injured him even if he didn't die. This was the difference between the peak divine sea realm and the wind-resisting realm. Although there was only a difference of one realm, there was a huge difference in strength. Scarlet figure? Could it be the young master of the Candle Flame sect? Young Master Yan'an? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli said in surprise, "Could it be that the person who just calculated your location is young Master Yan'an? He is at the 5th level of the wind-resisting realm, and his strength is comparable to the 7th level of the wind-resisting realm. How could you break his calculations?" Han Yueli's words were also filled with disbelief. In the victorious Wu country, only the young master of the Candle Flame sect, young Master Yan'an, could have such an appearance. It was said that young Master Yan'an was born with the innate fire spirit body, and his entire body was scarlet red. His current realm had reached the 5th level of the wind-resisting realm. Let alone a body-refining realm martial artist, he could even calculate the location of a divine sea realm martial artist, or even some wind-resisting realm martial artists. Chu Fengmian actually said that he had just broken young Master Yan'an's calculations. How could Han Yueli not be surprised? Young Master Yan'an? It's actually him. Chu Fengmian whispered to himself. Chu Fengmian had heard of this name before. In the victorious Wu country, There were leaders and outstanding people in the four major sections. This young Master Yin Nan was the number one person in the younger generation of the Candle Flame sect. In terms of status, he was comparable to the crown prince of the victorious Wu Academy, Ling Tian. No wonder Chu Fengmian's sneak attack was easily resolved by him. It turned out that it was this person. Even his sneak attack on Chu Fengmian did not succeed. If he really faced young Master Yin Nan, Chu Fengmian would not even have the possibility to resist and would be killed. This young Master Yin Nan was definitely a great threat. However, now that Chu Fengmian had broken his calculations, young Master Yin Nan would not be able to find Chu Fengmian's whereabouts in a short period of time. This gave Chu Fengmian some time. As long as Chu Fengmian had the opportunity to condense the ancient battle dragon's blood essence and step into the divine sea realm, Chu Fengmian was confident that he would be able to fight young Master Yin Nan. There are indeed many experts in the sacred grounds. Chu Fengmian sighed in his heart. In the other three major sects and the victorious Wu Academy, there were also experts who were comparable to young Master Yin Nan in the sacred grounds. In the sacred grounds, Chu Fengmian's strength was still too weak. He could not even protect himself. He had to increase his strength as soon as possible. "Let's go," Chu Fengmian said to Han Yueli beside him. His body suddenly moved and turned into a ray of light, quickly flying away. Han Yueli's body also turned into a ray of light and followed behind. "Where are we going?" Han Yueli, who was at the side, asked doubtfully. From the look on Chu Fengmian's face, it seemed that he had already decided where to go. "We're going to the heart of the sacred grounds, the mausoleum of Grand Emperor Richlush." Chu Fengmian's mind was racing as he spoke. The mausoleum of Grand Emperor Richlush was definitely the greatest treasure trove in the sacred grounds. The best way to get stronger was to find good fortune. Chapter 171. Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum? That's not the most dangerous place. Han Yueli frowned. Almost all of the experts in the Holy Land were gathered around the mausoleum, hoping to get a piece of it. Young Sir Flame South, who had been spying on Chu Fengmian, was most likely in the area as well. Wouldn't it be suicidal to go there now? Besides, no one knows for sure whether or not the news about Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum is really true. Going there now would be too much danger. Han Yueli couldn't help but say, it was indeed not worth it to take such a huge risk for a piece of news that he did not know was true or false. Instead of sitting around and waiting for death, why not take the initiative and look for some good fortune? Chu Fengmian said, his mind spinning. Obviously, he knew that the news about Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum being opened was true. After all, he could sense it from the Richlush steel. But in front of Han Yueli, Chu Fengmian didn't dare to fully trust him. Therefore, he decided to change the subject. If we want to leave the Holy Land, we'll need at least half a year before the warding spells are activated. Even if we run, we won't be able to outrun young Sir Flame South. Chu Fengmian said, why don't we look for an opportunity to break through? Either of us will have a chance to fight young Sir Flame South. Chu Fengmian's words were half true and half false. What was false was Chu Fengmian's reason, but what was true was his goal. Right now, Han Yueli and Chu Fengmian were like grasshoppers on a rope. At the very least, when it came to dealing with young Sir Flame South, they had the same goal. If they split up, young Sir Flame South would be able to pick them off one by one. If I can get some resources to break through to the wind control realm, then even if I can't defeat young Sir Flame South, I can at least protect myself. Han Yueli pondered after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. Oh, Han Yueli's words caused Chu Fengmian to reveal some surprise in his heart. Young Master Yin Nan's cultivation level is at the 5th level of the Imperial Wind Realm. His strength has reached the terrifying 7th level of the Imperial Wind Realm. Han Yueli is considered to have broken through the Imperial Wind Realm. He was only at the 1st level of the Imperial Wind Realm. In front of young Master Yin Nan, he was nothing. However, listening to Han Yueli's confidence, it seemed that she also had a unique method. Han Yueli was also one of the 4 great sects. As a true genius of the Cold Snow School, he was naturally not as ordinary as he looked. All right, I'll trust you this time, Han Yueli said. Two figures flew towards the core of the Holy Land. The closer he got to the core of the Holy Land, the denser the spiritual energy became. Chu Fengyan even felt that he could condense the spiritual energy into elixirs with a wave of his hand. At the same time, they encountered many spiritual herbs along the way. Chu Fengyan and Han Yueli collected them along the way. Chu Fengyan only wanted the spiritual herbs that could increase spiritual energy. As for the other spiritual herbs that could heal injuries or have other effects, Chu Fengyan did not want them. He gave them all to Han Yueli. This jade source flower is enough to refine the earth-level middle-grade jade source elixir. A jade source elixir can save a warrior's life as long as he is not dead, even if his spiritual vein is damaged. You don't want it? Seeing Chu Fengyan toss it to Han Yueli without any hesitation, Han Yueli exclaimed in surprise. "What are you trying to do?" Chu Fengyan tossed it to Han Yueli without any hesitation. To an ordinary martial artist, the jade origin flower was equivalent to their life. It was definitely extremely valuable and could even be considered a priceless treasure. Once it appeared, countless warriors would fight for it. Now that Chu Fengyan gave it away, Han Yueli could not help but ask, "It's useless. My cultivation technique is special. I only need spiritual herbs that can increase spiritual energy. As for the rest, I don't want them." Chu Fengyan said calmly. Chu Fengyan naturally knew the value of the jade source flower. If it was sold outside, it could be sold for millions of energy-gathering pills. But now that they were in the Holy Land, it was meaningless to give the jade source flower to Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan had the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon. As long as he was not dead, he could use the power of the bloodline to recover. If even the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon could not be recovered, a jade source flower would be useless. It was better to give it to Han Yueli. What a strange person. Could it be that he is so confident in his strength that he thinks he will never be in danger? Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengyan carefully. After spending some time together, she had a much deeper understanding of Chu Fengyan. The more she learned about him, the more shocked Han Yueli became. Chu Fengyan's knowledge and experience did not seem to be that of a young warrior of 20 years old. There were many spirit medicines that she did not recognize, but Chu Fengyan could identify them at a glance and even point out their effects. Chu Fengyan, in particular, was extremely calm and steady no matter what, which made him look like he was not a young martial artist at all. That was especially true when Chu Fengyan looked at her with a strange look in his eyes. It was not the same look of admiration or lust that ordinary warriors would have, but rather a look of nostalgia. Nostalgia? She had never seen Chu Fengyan before, so why would she look at him with such nostalgia? We're not far from Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum. Chu Fengyan suddenly stopped in his tracks. His sudden words interrupted Han Yueli's train of thought. What? Oh, we're already close to Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum, Han Yueli said in surprise. She had been following Chu Fengyan the entire time and hadn't paid much attention to the road. But now, Chu Fengyan had suddenly stopped and said that they were close to Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum. Could it be that Chu Fengyan had been here before? Han Yueli couldn't help but wonder. She had been following Chu Fengyan the entire time and hadn't taken any detours. It was almost as if Chu Fengyan knew everything about this holy land. Of course, there was no way she could have known that Chu Fengyan had the Richlush steel and could sense that they were in the vicinity of Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum. The power of the Richlush steel seemed to be on the verge of exploding out. If Chu Fengyan hadn't used the might of the ancient war dragon to suppress the power of the Richlush steel, the Richlush steel wouldn't have been able to escape. Most likely, the Richlush tombstone had already been broken through. Chapter 172. The secret of the Richlush steel being in Chu Fengyan's possession. Most likely, only the Chung clan and family Chu knew about it. These two great clans should not have spread the news yet. However, the disciples of the Chung clan and the Chu clan in the Holy Land must have already received the news. The Chung clan and the Chu clan were both part of the four great clans of the Wuxing Academy. Their disciples all cultivated in the Holy Land. According to Chu Fengyan's memories, the Chung clan and family Chu each had a conclave disciple who practiced cultivation in the Holy Land. There was Chung Tian Kong from the Chung clan and Chu Ning from family Chu. Those two conclave disciples were ranked 7th and 8th in the inner sect of the Martial Victory Institute, respectively. Although they weren't at the top, the fact that they were conclave disciples meant that they were far more important than the inner sect disciples. In fact, their positions in the Martial Victory Institute were similar to that of the inner sect elders, perhaps even higher. After all, it was highly likely that conclave disciples would become vice deans in the future. Therefore, the inner sect elders treated them with the utmost respect. It wasn't just because of their status, but also because of their strength. In fact, they were no weaker than the junior house lord of the Candle Flame Society, young Sir Flame South. As of now, Chu Fengmian had 3 enemies, and any one of them was someone he couldn't possibly deal with. Power. I'm not strong enough yet. For the first time, Chu Fengmian felt a thirst for power, and knew that he needed to get stronger as quickly as possible. That way, he would be able to make a move in the fight for Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered, and he lowered his voice. Someone's coming. 3 peak Divine Sea experts, and 1 in the 3rd level of the Wind Rider realm. Chu Fengmian's divine sense swept out and suddenly found 4 figures in his divine sense. These 4 figures seemed to be chasing after some kind of existence. Chu Fengmian's consciousness swept over again, but he suddenly discovered a huge monster. What's that? A flood dragon? Chu Fengmian suddenly said when he sensed a faint dragon might from the huge creature. There's actually someone chasing after this flood dragon? A flood dragon? Han Yueli suddenly spoke up after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. It said that there are countless powerful beasts in the Holy Land. They are all attracted by the rich spiritual qi in the Holy Land. I didn't expect there to be a Jiao dragon here. The dragon was a divine beast that had not appeared for 1,000 years. The Jiao dragon was a demonic beast that possessed the bloodline of the real dragon, such as the dark water mystical snake that Chu Fengmian had killed. If his strength could reach the wind-controlling realm, he might be able to transform into a Jiao dragon. Chu Fengmian turned his eyes and stared in the direction of the flood dragon. No matter how thin the flood dragon's bloodline was, it did indeed have the bloodline of a true dragon. Chu Fengmian was currently cultivating the battle dragon chant, and he was condensing the dragon's blood. If Chu Fengmian could obtain the flood dragon's blood, or even its dragon core, it would definitely be of great use to him. Not to mention Chu Fengmian's cultivation of the dragon battle formula, it was extremely beneficial to any venerable warrior. The flood dragon's blood could also strengthen one's body. A true body refining grandmaster needed to bathe in spiritual herbs and blood every day. The best spiritual herb was the dragon's blood. The Jiao dragon's dragon core contained extremely pure spiritual energy. A single core of the Jiao dragon was equivalent to the spiritual energy of millions of energy-gathering pills. If he could obtain the dragon core and the flood dragon's blood, Chu Fengmian was confident that his strength could be further improved and even reach the Divine Sea realm. In fact, during his time in the Holy Land, Chu Fengmian had accumulated a lot of spiritual herbs, which were enough to transform into spiritual energy to reach the Divine Sea realm. However, what he lacked the most was an opportunity. The appearance of the flood dragon gave Chu Fengmian an opportunity. Chu Fengmian had to obtain the dragon core of the flood dragon to reach the Divine Sea realm. In the Holy Land, Chu Fengmian was not completely powerless against a wind-controlling realm warrior. What are you going to do? Han Yueli watched Chu Fengmian stand up suddenly and asked with vigilance. Let's go and have a look. Maybe there's a chance to obtain some dragon blood, or even dragon core. Chu Fengmian said. His body flashed as he chased after Han Yueli. When Chu Fengmian chased after Han Yueli, he used Emperor Shi's divine concealment technique to hide his body. Emperor Shi was an extremely powerful existence in the ancient era. When Emperor Shi's divine concealment technique was activated, no one could see through Chu Fengmian's body unless they had reached the divine power realm. After Chu Fengmian hid himself, He also used Emperor Shi's divine concealment technique to hide Hanuel Li, who was beside him. Two figures had already stealthily closed in on him. Another mysterious technique. What kind of secret does Chu Fengyan have? Hanuel Li could sense the power of Emperor Shi's divine concealment technique. This method is enough to make the martial artist of the wind controlling realm undetectable within 5 feet. If used for sneak attack. If it was used as a sneak attack within 5 feet, the success rate of a sneak attack could reach up to 90%. This alone was enough to prove the power of Emperor Shi's divine concealment technique. When they got closer, they could see 100 feet long body roaring. It was the Jiao Dragon. Beside the Jiao Dragon, there were 4 warriors who were fighting with the Jiao Dragon. Most of the scales on the Jiao Dragon's body were broken. It looked like it was severely injured. Is that Feng Heyue from the Eelist sect? Hanuel Li whispered to Chu Fengyan when he saw the wind controlling realm warrior leading the group. Feng Heyue is a core disciple of the Eelist sect. Although he's not as powerful as Prince Yannan, he's still a rare genius in victorious Wu country. He's ranked in the top 20 among the countless geniuses in victorious Wu country. As for the other 3, they also cultivate the Eelist sect's wind god technique. They should be the elites among the inner disciples of the Eelist sect. Their strength is not inferior to mine. It won't be easy for you to snatch the dragon elixir from him. Hanuel Li could guess what Chu Fengyan was thinking. With Chu Fengyan's character, he would only do such a thing when he wanted to obtain the dragon elixir. He would secretly follow and wait for an opportunity. With the strength of the 4 of them, they shouldn't be able to force the Jiao Dragon to such an extent. Chu Fengyan's eyes were observing the battle. Chapter 173. Every time the dragon moved, there was a huge burst of spiritual energy that forced the 4 of them back. It could still have such strength even when it was severely injured. If the dragon was at its peak, its strength would be at least at level 7 of the Imperial Wind Realm. It could even be at level 8 or 9 of the Imperial Wind Realm. A demonic beast with such strength was definitely not something that the 4 of them could injure. There must be something fishy about it. Senior Brother Feng, I didn't expect to encounter such an injured flood dragon today. We really picked up a great bargain. An Eelist sect disciple suddenly said. Chu Fengyan was now 100 feet away from them. But in Chu Fengyan's ears, this voice sounded as if it was right next to his ear. It was very clear. After cultivating the battle dragon skill, Chu Fengyan's body was close to that of an ancient battle dragon. His 5 senses had surpassed that of a human. Even a sage could not have such ability. The dragon's blood is enough to help us refine our bodies. In this way, we can use the dragon's blood to break through to the Imperial Wind Realm. Another Eelist sect disciple said. His voice was filled with incomparable excitement. A dragon was full of treasures. The dragon's blood was enough to help a martial artist break through, even if they could not get the dragon elixir. To be able to get some dragon's blood was a great opportunity for them. One should know that there might not be a single dragon in the entire victorious Wu country. Moreover, the dragon's strength was extremely strong. Many of the dragons were at the divine power realm. Even a sage would not dare to provoke them. Such a severely injured dragon was a gift from the heavens. It was a fortune that could be picked up from the ground. Don't underestimate the dragon. It still has strength. Let's kill it first. I will only take its dragon elixir. The rest of its flesh and blood will be given to you. Feng Heyue, who was the leader, said. His eyes were filled with greed. The most important part of a dragon was its dragon elixir. If they could get the dragon elixir, the flesh and blood were nothing. His strength could only be ranked in the top 20 among the younger generation of geniuses. But if he could get the dragon elixir, after refining it, it was very likely that he would be able to match up to young Noble Yin Nan and the others, or even challenge Ling Tian. A Jiao Dragon's dragon core was enough to be called a great opportunity. Hearing Feng Heyue's promise, the other 3 Eelist sect disciples became even more excited. Yes, the 4 figures once again engaged in battle with the serpent dragon. After a few minutes, the flood dragon began to feel that it was losing its strength, and its resistance was becoming weaker and weaker. He seemed to have reached his limit. Roar! The flood dragon roared angrily and turned around, trying to escape in a certain direction. This flood dragon looks like it can't hold on any longer. Are you still not going to help? Han Yueli couldn't help but speak up when she saw this scene. From the looks of it, the flood dragon no longer had any strength left and could be killed at any moment. Wasn't this the best time to kill the flood dragon and seize the dragon core? However, Chu Fengmian didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. He just watched everything indifferently and didn't seem to have any intention of taking action. A flood dragon, even if its bloodline isn't pure, is still a dragon. This kind of siege isn't enough to push it to its limit. Chu Fengmian said softly, "Dragons were extremely noble creatures. They were born with noble bloodline. Even if they were to die, they wouldn't run away. Even if they were to encounter a life and death crisis, they would only choose to fight to the death instead of running away." Although the flood dragon looked like it was running away, Chu Fengmian could tell that it was pretending to be weak. Perhaps it was leading the four-wind resisting realm martial artist to that place, and then suddenly attacking. The flood dragon's intelligence wasn't any lower than a human's. Naturally, it knew some strategies. At this time, if they were to chase after the flood dragon, they wouldn't even know how they died. Senior Brother Feng, the flood dragon is trying to escape. An Eelist sect disciple hurriedly shouted, "Go after it!" Feng Heyue roared. The flood dragon looks like it's at the end of its rope. It must be going back to its lair to make a last stand. There must be countless treasures in its lair. If we can get it, we'll be rich. Feng Heyue shouted excitedly. The serpent's lair was rumored to contain countless treasures in the legends. Thinking of the countless treasures in front of him, Feng Heyue was extremely excited. The other three Eelist sect disciples were no exception. Their faces were filled with excitement. The four of them hurriedly chased after the flood dragon. "Let's go too." Chu Fengmian stood up. Just as he was about to leave, his body suddenly stopped. "Stop!" He hurriedly signaled Han Yueli, who was beside him, to stop. Almost at the same time, two auras flew across the sky. It looked like they were chasing after the flood dragon. Sure enough, this flood dragon doesn't seem to be that simple. Feeling the existence of the two auras, Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The owners of the two auras were true experts. They were both at level 5 wind resisting realm. It looked like the two of them were the ones who had injured the flood dragon. However, it looked like the two of them deliberately let the flood dragon go. That was why the Eelist sect disciples encountered the flood dragon and chased after it. "Let's go. You'd better not take any action later. Hide far away. If there's an accident, run away quickly." Chu Fengmian turned back and instructed Han Yueli. His body flashed, and he followed after them. It was Chu Fengmian's idea to seize the dragon pill. He did not want to implicate others. Han Yueli wanted to say something, but gave up in the end. She also followed after Chu Fengmian. Han Yueli wanted to refute Chu Fengmian's words. She was also a martial artist at the peak of the Divine Sea Realm. Since when did she need to be taken care of and instructed by Chu Fengmian, a martial artist at the body refining realm? However, when she thought of Chu Fengmian's strength, Han Yueli had no way to refute. At least from the point that Chu Fengmian could kill Yin Xian, Chu Fengmian's strength was much stronger than Han Yueli. Along the way, Chu Fengmian took the lead. Han Yueli followed beside him. Unknowingly, Han Yueli had become somewhat dependent on Chu Fengmian. No. As a martial artist, how can I rely on others? Especially him. Han Yueli's eyes flashed with a trace of haze. Chapter 174. Only when the two auras gradually disappeared into the distance did Chu Fengmian get up and chase after them with Han Yueli. The strength of the two figures was not something that the Eelist sect could match. Even though Chu Fengmian was confident in Empress Shi's divine concealment technique, he did not dare to underestimate them. Chu Fengmian stood up and chased after them after they left. The dragon did not escape quickly. It looked like it was unable to escape due to its injuries. However, Chu Fengmian knew that it was just a disguise. With the dragon's remaining strength, it was enough to fight the four from the Eelist sect to the death. The flood dragon ran all the way to a cave and burrowed into it. Senior Brother Feng, this should be the dragon's lair. Chase after it. The dragon is running out of strength. Let's kill it and all the treasures on it will be ours." Feng Hiyue roared and immediately chased after them. He rushed into the cave, and the three people from the Eelist sect also followed closely behind. "Should we chase after it?" Han Yueli asked softly. "No need." Chu Fengmian looked at the cave and said. A huge amount of spiritual energy was emitted from the cave. What came out after that was a huge flame. "Damn it, the dragon is playing tricks." Feng Hiyue was the first to rush out of the cave. Most of his clothes were burnt. Clearly, he did not expect the serpent dragon to take the initiative to show weakness and launch a sneak attack. The moment they entered the cave, a flame suddenly appeared and filled the entire cave. The flood dragon's intelligence was no less than that of a human's. He had already set up countless traps in his lair. The moment the four people from the Eelist sect entered, they suddenly activated all the traps within. In an instant, the four of them were forced to retreat. If it wasn't for the fact that the flood dragon was severely injured, they would have already died. Other than Feng Hiyue, another Eelist sect disciple also escaped. As for the other two, they were trapped in the cave by the flood dragon. "Senior brother Feng, save me." In the cave, a scream came from the two people who were trapped in the cave. "Senior brother Feng, what should we do? How can we save the two of them?" The Eelist sect disciple asked anxiously when he saw that the other two had not come out. "If this goes on, the two of them will die in the dragon's hands." "I know," Feng Hue said with a cold look in his eyes. "Today, even with my strength, I may not be the dragon's opponent. If we save them now, we will be in danger. It doesn't matter if the two of them die. Let them die in there, and we can exhaust the dragon's strength." Feng Hiyue's tone was cold. It was clear that Feng Hiyue was not going to save them. The life and death of the two Eelist sect disciples had nothing to do with him. "But senior brother Feng, if we return to the sect and people find out about this matter, the two of us will be punished by the sect." The Eelist sect disciple hesitantly. "They're all disciples of the Eelist sect, disciples of the same sect. So what? We are not the ones who killed them. It was the dragon." Feng Hue looked at the other Eelist sect disciple and said coldly, with killing intent, "Only you and I know about this. If the sect finds out, I will not forgive you. What's more, those two guys are dead. I don't want any of the treasures on this flood dragon, except for its dragon core. I'll give them all to you. I guarantee that you can step into the wind-controlling realm if you get them alone." That Eelist sect disciple originally wanted to say something, but after hearing Feng Hiyue's words, he could not say anything. Indeed, if the other two Eelist sect disciples died, the dragon would belong to him alone. With such hesitation, the Eelist sect disciple kept quiet. "Feng Hiyue is ruthless." Hearing Feng Hiyue's words, Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. If Feng Hiyue took action and entered the cave, there was a high chance that he could save the other two Eelist sect disciples. But if he did so, it would give the dragon a chance to breathe, and they would not be able to kill the dragon today. Between killing the dragon and saving the two Eelist sect disciples, Feng Hiyue chose the former. For a martial artist, his own interests were the most important. There was no doubt about it. However, it would be impossible for Feng Hiyue to obtain the dragon elixir. Chu Fengmian sneered. The two martial artists at the 5th level of the wind-controlling realm that followed them were obviously not just here to watch. That flood dragon is coming out. Boom! Engulfed in flames, the flood dragon suddenly rushed out of the cave. In the dragon's mouth, there was a trace of blood. Apparently, the two Eelist sect disciples had died in the dragon's mouth. "Kill him." Seeing the dragon attack, Feng Hiyue took the initiative to attack. Just now, the flood dragon had already made its final counterattack. Now, the flood dragon really did not have much strength left. Chu Fengmian could feel that the dragon's strength was rapidly depleting. Now, it only had the strength of level 1 Imperial Wind Realm. It was far from being comparable to Feng Hiyue. 7 slashes of the Wind God. Feng Hiyue let out a roar as he slashed out 7 wind blades in a row. The moment the 7 wind blades were slashed out, the dragon immediately sensed them. But with its severely injured body, it was impossible for it to dodge. Bang! 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 The 7 wind blades slashed the dragon's body, causing its already severe injuries to worsen. The dragon is dying. Hurry up and help, Feng Heyue shouted. The other Eelist sect disciple also slashed out a few wind blades. After a few minutes, the dragon, which was hundreds of feet long, fell to the ground with a sorrowful cry. On top of the dragon's head, a ray of light shone through its flesh. Dragon elixir. Feng Heyue was overjoyed. The ray of light was the dragon elixir. Chapter 175. A flood dragon was like a huge treasure trove. Now, it had died in front of the two of them. Both Feng Heyue and the Eelist sect disciple were extremely excited. However, at this moment, a black gas emerged from the dragon's corpse. It split into two and landed on the bodies of Feng Heyue and the Eelist sect disciple. What is this? Hanweli asked curiously when he saw this scene. Curse, a curse from the dragon clan's bloodline. Chu Fengmian said, the dragon clan is a clan blessed by the heavens. Their bloodline is extremely noble. Anyone who kills a member of the dragon clan will be cursed. This curse doesn't have much of an effect. However, it has always existed in the warrior's body. It could turn into an inner demon and be triggered when the warrior breaks through. However, this curse is only effective on warriors with weak minds. It has no effect on warriors who have a strong martial heart. Chu Fengmian said, Curse. This kind of secret, I don't think the entire victorious Wu country knows about it. After hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli suddenly asked. It was as if Chu Fengmian knew everything. Even the matter of this curse, Chu Fengmian was extremely clear about it. In this world, was there anything that Chu Fengmian didn't know? Han Yueli almost thought that Chu Fengmian was omniscient and omnipotent. How could he know so many things? I've only read a little more ancient books in the past. I've seen it in some ancient books. Chu Fengmian didn't want to explain too much. He had lived for hundreds of years in his previous life and couldn't cultivate. He read all kinds of miscellaneous books and studied all kinds of strange things. Although Chu Fengmian studied how to resolve the effects of the heavenly constitution so that he could cultivate, he also studied a lot of ancient books. However, during his research, Chu Fengmian had also read many ancient books, which was why he had such profound knowledge. However, although he has suffered the curse, I'm afraid Feng He won't be able to endure the dragon's curse. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The two hidden auras were clearly unwilling to bear the curse because of it. Therefore, he had intentionally injured the dragon and let it go so that Feng Heyue and the disciples of the Eelist sect could kill it. Then let the curse be cast on them. Now that the curse had been removed, the two figures should be making their move soon. Chu Fengmian didn't believe that the two figures didn't come for the flood dragon. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. This was a good plan. He did not need to bear the curse, and could also obtain the dragon core. In the end, Feng He was just making a wedding dress for someone else. Are you still not going to make a move? Feng Heyue's strength has been depleted by more than half. If he takes advantage of this opportunity to attack, it is very likely that he will snatch the dragon pill. Han Yueli looked at the dragon core, his eyes revealing a look of desire. A dragon elixir from a dragon elixir in the wind-controlling realm was extremely tempting even to some saints, not to mention Han Yueli. Even if she could obtain 1/10 of the dragon elixir, it would be enough for her to break through to the wind-controlling realm. Wait, now is not the time to make a move, Chu Fengmian said, stopping Han Yueli from making a move. Let's wait and see. Someone else will make a move. Someone else? Han Yueli was puzzled, but before he could say anything else, two enormous spiritual energies had already erupted. At the same time, two figures leaped out from the surrounding forest and reached out to grab the dragon. Who is it? Feng Heyue turned his head and roared. Just as he activated the spiritual energy in his body, he was knocked to the ground by one of the figures with a wave of his hand. As for the other Eelist sect disciple, he spat out a large mouthful of blood and fell to the ground after one move. One move had killed the Eelist sect disciple. Chung Tiankong, Chuning, it is the two core disciples of the Wuxing Academy. Seeing the two figures appear, Han Yueli immediately recognized them. There were no more than 5 people in the sacred ground who were at the 5th level of the wind-controlling realm. Naturally, he could recognize them quickly. Cheng Tiankong, Chu Ning, it is actually the 2 of them. Chu Fumian knew these 2 names. Previously, Chu Fumian had thought of these 2 people and regarded them as one of his biggest threats. Now, they actually appeared. 2 martial artists at the 5th level of the wind-controlling realm working together were indeed enough to seriously injure the Flood Dragon. Could it be that Chu Fumian had already discovered their existence from the beginning? Han Yueli looked at Chu Fumian and thought in disbelief. Thinking of Chu Fumian's abnormal behavior, it seemed that he had already discovered the others. These 2 people were experts at the 5th level of the wind-controlling realm. Even Feng Hiyu did not notice them, but Chu Fumian had already discovered them. How terrifying was this person? While Han Yueli was still pondering, the 2 figures had already appeared in the sky and looked down at Feng Hiyu on the ground. Cheng Tiankong appeared and laughed. Brother Chu, your plan is really good. There is really a piece of trash helping us to remove the curse. Ha ha. Although the curse is nothing, it is still a problem. Since there is someone who can help the 2 of us, we naturally do not have to do it ourselves. Chu Ning, who was standing by the side, laughed out loud as he looked at Feng Hiyu with a mocking gaze. The trap that the 2 of them had set up was actually hooked by someone. Cheng Tiankong, Chu Ning, it was actually the 2 of you who launched a sneak attack. Are you saying that the 2 of you want to snatch the Flood Dragon? Feng Hiyu asked angrily. How dare you snatch something from the Eelist sect? Aren't the 2 of you afraid of being hunted down by the Eelist sect? What is the Eelist sect? The 2 of us will kill you today. This Flood Dragon was intentionally released by the 2 of us. Otherwise, do you think that you would be so lucky to encounter a Flood Dragon? Cheng Tiankong said disdainfully. Feng Hiyu, don't resist. Even if you go all out, you're not a match for the 2 of us in 3 moves. Moreover, your spiritual energy is exhausted now. If you are willing to kneel down, destroy your cultivation, and become our servant, we can consider sparing your life today. Chu Ning also revealed a sinister smile and laughed. Damn it. Chapter 176. Even if I die today, I won't let the 2 of you get what you want. Feng Hiyu roared furiously as he rushed up to the sky. As he waved his hands, a strong gust of wind started to gather. In the sky, the gust of wind turned into a huge wind spirit sword and slashed towards the 2 of them. A mayfly trying to shake a tree. Don't overestimate yourself. Chu Ning sneered when he saw Feng Hiyu's attack. He moved his body and appeared in front of the wind spirit sword. He clenched his right fist and punched out. Crack! With a crisp sound, the wind spirit greatsword suddenly shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. The wind spirit giant sword formed by Feng Hiyu's full power was destroyed by Chu Ning with a single punch. When the wind spirit sword shattered, the recoil hit Feng Hiyu's body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Feng Hiyu's body started to sway. If he wasn't struggling to support himself, he would have collapsed. What terrifying strength! Chu Ning is indeed a core disciple of Wuxing Academy. He is the strongest among the younger generation of family Chu. Just one punch is enough to break Feng Hiyu's attack. Han Yueli, who was at the side, said in shock. Feng Hiyu wasn't an unknown martial artist. He was one of the top 3 among the younger generation of disciples in the Eelist sect. He was one of the top 20 geniuses in the entire Wuxing nation. Even a peerless genius like him couldn't withstand a single blow from Chu Ning. How powerful must Chu Ning be to be able to do that? Although Chu Ning is strong, he is only able to do this because he is opportunistic. Chu Fengyan said. Chu Ning was indeed much stronger than Feng Hiyu. However, it was still impossible for him to defeat Feng Hiyu with a single blow. The reason why Feng Hiyu was defeated so miserably was mainly because of Feng Hiyu. He had already been entangled with the dragon earlier. In addition, he was ambushed by the dragon and lost half of his strength. That was why he was defeated so miserably. He couldn't even block a single attack from Chu Ming. Although there was a reason for this, Chu Ning's strength could not be underestimated. The strength of his fist was close to the 8th level of the body refinement realm, and this was not even Chu Ning's full strength. Looks like Feng Hiyue can't hold on any longer. It's time to make a move. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed coldly. Meeting Cheng Tiankong and Chu Ning was out of Chu Fengmian's expectations. However, the appearance of these two people made Chu Fengmian even more determined to snatch the dragon core. These two were definitely Chu Fengmian's greatest enemies in the Holy Land. The two of them knew that Chu Fengmian had the rich lush steel, and therefore, it was only natural that they would try to kill him. If the two of them were to obtain the Flood Dragon's corpse, especially the dragon core, then Chu Fengmian would be in even greater trouble. If the two of them obtained this dragon core, their strength might even reach Ling Tian's level. At that time, it would definitely be a huge problem. No matter what, Chu Fengmian had to get the dragon core. He couldn't allow it to fall into the hands of these two people. Chu Fengmian's body pulsed with spiritual power as he prepared to make a move at a moment's notice. "What are you doing?" Han Yueli asked, visibly startled by Chu Fengmian's actions. "The dragon-seizing pill," Chu Fengmian said calmly. "The dragon-seizing pill? The dragon-seizing pill? Are you crazy? You want to snatch the dragon core from these two freaks?" Han Yueli said in disbelief. If he had just snatched the dragon core from Feng Hiyue, he might have had a chance. But now, the dragon core was in the hands of Cheng Tiankong and Chu Ning. These two were invincible in the Holy Land, and when they joined forces, the other experts in the Holy Land would have no choice but to back down. Snatching the dragon core from two 5th-level wind control realm experts wasn't just arrogance. It was madness. In fact, it was suicide. "If we run into any danger, you run. Don't worry about me," Chu Fengmian said calmly. Chu Fengmian was taking a huge gamble, and considering how dangerous it was understandable that Han Yueli didn't want to get involved. But riches and honor came with risk. If there was good fortune, one had to fight for it. Chu Fengmian had reached his current level of strength through numerous deadly battles and numerous dangerous situations. He was now completely focused and no longer spoke. Instead, he focused all his attention on the Flood Dragon's corpse in front of him. He was ready to make a move at a moment's notice. "I might as well kill this piece of trash." Off to the side, Chu Ning didn't give Feng Hiyue a chance to do anything. Chuckling viciously, Chu Ning unleashed a fist strike that killed Feng Hiyue. Then, he looked over at the head of the Flood Dragon. "If we can get the dragon core, then the treasure storehouse of Grand Emperor Richlush will be ours." Chu Ning's eyes flickered with greed. "It's too bad we didn't get the Richlush steel. Instead, it fell into the hands of that brat Chu Fengmian. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble." "Don't worry about it," Cheng Tiankong said. "I heard that Chu Fengmian was one of the participants in the Holy Land entrance examination. He definitely had something to do with the changes in Grand Emperor Richlush's tomb." Cheng Tiankong chuckled coldly. "Once we assimilate this dragon core, we'll kill that brat and get the Richlush steel. Then we'll inherit Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure trove. Ling Tian is nothing compared to us. Once we get back to the Institute, we'll kill him. Let's go get the dragon core." "All right." With that, Chu Ning walked over to the corpse of the Flood Dragon, pulled out a saber, and cut open its skull. Beneath the skull, a gigantic demonic core the size of a human head appeared. It was a demon core that contained the purest form of dragon might. Dragon core. This was the dragon core of this Flood Dragon. The spiritual power in this dragon core is immense. It's probably worth tens of millions of energy convergence pills. Chu Ning could feel the surging spiritual energy in the dragon elixir and could not help but ask, "Energy convergence pills?" Comparing an energy convergence pill to a dragon core is like comparing dirt to gold. They're on completely different levels. Cheng Tiankong said with a smile after hearing Chu Ning's words. "If you took that dragon core out, you could probably sell it for hundreds of millions of energy convergence pills, maybe even billions. But even then, I doubt anyone would be willing to sell it. That dragon core is very useful to sages. It can purify one's bloodline and could even push one's bloodline to the next level." Chapter 177. "That's right. Let's take out the dragon core first," Chu Ning said as he walked towards the dragon. just when he was about to take out the dragon core. Roar! A dragon's roar suddenly rang out. This sudden dragon's roar stunned Chu Fengyan, who was about to make a move. Could this flood dragon be resurrected? Chu Fengyan could see that this flood dragon was already dead. Even his head had been cracked open. How could he still be alive? Where did this dragon's roar come from? Be careful! Retreat! Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong both shouted at the same time and hurriedly retreated. Under this dragon's roar, a huge amount of spiritual energy suddenly burst out. On the body of that flood dragon, an identical flood dragon suddenly appeared. This dragon's golden scales flickered. It looked as if it was not injured at all and suddenly came back to life. With an angry roar, it rushed towards Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong. Immortal dragon's soul? Chu Fengyan noticed that although this dragon's appearance was exactly the same as the dragon's corpse, there was no vitality. The dragon in front of them was actually a dragon's soul. It was the dragon's soul of the dragon that had just died. A true dragon would rather die than be destroyed. This dragon, even if it died, would not allow others to desecrate its body. It was actually fighting with its dragon soul. Rising Dragon Path. Doomsday, Rising Dragon. Seeing the spiritual energy erupting from the dragon's soul, Chu Fengyan was shocked. This move, Doomsday Rising Dragon, was the most powerful move of the True Dragon Clan. It was a terrifying move that the True Dragon Clan would only use when they were on the verge of death. This move would not only kill the dragon, but also crush the True Dragon's soul. It was a real Doomsday move. Now it was no wonder that the dragon did not resist with all its might. It actually planned to use its dragon soul to use this move. Retreat. This dragon soul is planning to make a final resistance. Doomsday, Rising Dragon. Chu Ning hurriedly shouted. The might of this move, Doomsday, Rising Dragon, was recorded in countless ancient books. It was said that a true dragon of the wind-controlling realm had once killed a saint with this move, Doomsday, Rising Dragon. This kind of terrifying power, even if it was unleashed by a dragon soul, Chu Ning would not dare to be careless. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong retreated almost at the same time. The spiritual power in their bodies also burst out, turning into a barrier blocking in front of them. He was prepared to block this Doomsday Rising Dragon. Roar! 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 3 consecutive dragon roars rang out. The dragon's soul flew out and soared into the sky with a loud rumble. Suddenly, the entire world was filled with a terrifying dragon's might. Doomsday, Rising Dragon. Rumble. An extremely powerful wave of spirit energy exploded out, and countless traces of spirit energy collided. This was the True Dragon Clan's most terrifying attack, its ultimate killing move. After the Doomsday Rising Dragon was unleashed, the entire dragon soul was shattered. Once the dragon ascended, the dragon soul would shatter. No matter how powerful the technique was, there was no way to save this Jiao dragon. The violent explosion swept across the surrounding 100 feet. This was still the distance where the power was compressed to a point. If all of it exploded out, the surrounding 1,000 feet would be affected. However, the more it was compressed, the stronger the power of the explosion within the 100 feet was. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong, who were in the center of the explosion, couldn't help but spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. After taking the Doomsday Rising Dragon head-on, the two of them were already seriously injured. If the two of them weren't strong enough to be prepared, this Doomsday Rising Dragon would have been enough to kill them. It's a pity that this Doomsday Rising Dragon was unleashed by the Dragon Soul, but it has a body. The power of this Doomsday Rising Dragon can be twice as strong. It's very likely to kill the two of them. Chu Fengyan thought in his heart. If there was a chance to kill the two of them, it would be excellent news for Chu Fengyan. But even so, this Doomsday Rising Dragon gave Chu Fengyan an excellent opportunity. A good opportunity for Chu Fengyan to seize the Dragon Core. Taking advantage of the time when Cheng Tiankong and Chu Ning were still dispelling the effects of the Doomsday Rising Dragon, his figure suddenly turned into an illusionary figure with a flicker as he dashed toward the body of the serpent. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian's figure had already reached the side of the flood dragon's body. With a grab of his hand, the head-sized dragon core was already in Chu Fengmian's hand. "Who is it? Get out!" Seeing that the dragon core was seized, Cheng Tiankong and Chu Ning almost instantly burst out with surging spiritual energy at the same time. This surging spiritual energy turned into a spiritual energy storm, sweeping across everything in the surroundings. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's body was swept out by this spiritual energy storm. "It's you, Chu Fengmian." Seeing Chu Fengmian, Cheng Tiankong and Chu Ning's faces were not angry, but smiled. It was as if they had encountered a pleasant surprise. "Well, the two of us were planning to look for you, but we didn't expect you to deliver yourself to us. Hand over the abundant, lush monument." It's a waste for the abundant, lush monument to be in the hands of a piece of trash like you. Chu Ning laughed coldly, then rushed towards Chu Fengmian with a flash of his body. Although Chu Ning was seriously injured, his speed was still shocking, far exceeding Chu Fengmian's expectations. These two were worthy of being the core disciples of the Martial Victory Academy, true geniuses. Even after being hit by the Doomsday Rising Dragon, they still had such terrifying strength. "I heard that you humiliated our family Chu in the Martial Victory Academy. Today, I'll beat you to death and hang your corpse in front of the Academy's gates for 3 days. It'll serve as a warning to others of the consequences of provoking our family Chu." Chu Ning's face revealed a sinister sneer as he threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. "Is that so? You want to get the abundant, lush monument? Let's see if you have what it takes." Chu Fengmian replied with a cold laugh. His figure flashed, turned into a phantom, and quickly fled into the distance. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he was far from being able to fight against these two geniuses. Chu Fengmian's goal was to get the dragon core. After getting the dragon core, he used all his strength to escape. Once Chu Fengmian refined the dragon core and stepped into the Divine Sea Realm, he would return to fight with these two. Try to escape? Chu Fengmian's figure flashed continuously. Heaven-sealing divine scroll seal. A huge scroll suddenly appeared in Cheng Tiankong's hand. The scroll seemed to have enclosed everything in its surroundings. The entire space was sealed. "What?" Chu Fengmian's expression changed drastically when the surrounding space was sealed off. Cheng Tiankong actually had a spiritual weapon that could seal off space. Chapter 178. I never would have guessed that you'd take the initiative to come knocking on my door. Sadly for you, I bet you never would have guessed that I have a spirit item that can seal off space. Originally, I had countless plans to lure you out. But now that you've come knocking on my door, the rich lush steel is ours. Cheng Tiankong laughed heartily at Chu Fengmian. He and Chu Ning had come up with countless schemes to get Chu Fengmian's rich lush steel. Whoever got the rich lush steel would gain access to the true treasures of Grand Emperor Rich Lush. After all, the greatest treasure trove of Grand Emperor Rich Lush wasn't the wealth contained within. It was the legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush. As the founder of the Kingdom of Martial Victories, Grand Emperor Rich Lush was even stronger than a sage. Therefore, whoever got his legacy would be the ultimate treasure trove. The Rich Lush steel was related to the legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush. The Rich Lush steel is nothing more than a waste of a heavenly treasure. Hand it over. A piece of trash like you doesn't qualify to inherit the legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush. Chu Ning roared, unleashing a fist strike that shook everything in its path. It was a fist strike that was so terrifying that it was almost on the level of the God Power level. God Power sages could gain enlightenment of the magical laws of space and could shatter space itself. Although Chu Ning's fist strike wasn't powerful enough to shatter space itself, it was still powerful enough to cause space itself to tremble. In other words, he was already close to the peak of the wind control realm. With that level of strength, he could easily pass 50 levels on the Heavenspan path. Phantom Shadow. Chu Fengmian knew that there was no way he could face this fist strike head-on. His figure flashed as he activated the phantom body technique and headed towards the forest below. He was prepared to hide in the forest. "It's useless," Chung Tiankong said. "The heaven-sealing God chart has sealed this place. Unless you're at the peak of the wind control realm, you won't be able to escape." Chung Tiankong laughed heartily at Chu Fengmian's actions. "Be a good boy and hand over the rich lush steel. If you make me feel better, I might spare your life, or even make you our servant." Chung Tiankong's words were spoken very quickly, and each one of them seemed to contain terrifying spiritual power that would cause anyone who heard them to tremble. Heavenly Thunder Drum. Chung Tiankong's cultivation technique was an extremely special sound technique. When he spoke, his words contained spiritual energy. The slightest bit of carelessness could possibly shatter one's mind and cause one to lose one's martial heart. From then on, one's cultivation level would no longer be able to advance any further. Dragon fights in the wild. Facing the attack of the thunder drum, Chu Fengmian roared. A pure dragon roar came out of Chu Fengmian's mouth. This dragon roar was extremely pure, many times purer than the dragon roar of the flood dragon. With this dragon roar, the damage caused by the thunder drum was instantly shattered. What kind of cultivation technique is this kid cultivating? He actually managed to break my heavenly thunder drum with a single dragon roar. Chung Tiankong looked at Chu Fengmian and frowned. His eyes revealed a bit of killing intent. This brat's method of cultivation is simply my nemesis. If I don't kill him today, when he grows up, he will sooner or later become a great threat to me. Brother Chung, don't worry. This brat will definitely die today. Chu Ning sneered at the side. His figure moved, turning into an escape light as he chased after Chu Fengmian below. In a few breaths, Chu Ning's figure had already caught up to Chu Fengmian. In terms of movement technique, Chu Ning's movement technique was definitely not comparable to Chu Fengmian's phantom movement technique. However, in this small area of the sealed heaven divine diagram, Chu Fengmian's movement technique could not be fully displayed. In such a small area, even if Chu Fengmian wanted to escape, he would still be caught by Chu Ning. Tyrant Fist. Chu Ning's spiritual energy condensed on his fist as he suddenly punched out. This Tyrant Fist was one of the martial techniques that Family Chu's disciples must cultivate. Chu Beige had also used this technique before. However, compared to the current Chu Ning, the power of these two punches could be said to be completely different. This Tyrant Fist was executed by Chu Ning. The fist wind was filled with the intent of an overlord. A fist pressure suddenly enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. What a terrifying fist. Is this the true strength of a Family Chu's disciple? Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Ning and his expression changed. The Family Chu could be considered one of the 4 great clans of the Martial Victory Academy. Naturally, they relied on more than just their foundation. Compared to Chu Ning, Chu Beige and Chu Qianjue were nothing. Scarlet Flame. Chu Fengmian roared in his heart as the Scarlet Flame sword appeared in his hand. He fiercely slashed at the incoming fist. Facing Chu Ning, Chu Fengmian did not dare to hold back. The Scarlet Flame sword's edge condensed to flame. As the sword energy slashed out, it looked like a sea of fire. Although the sea of fire was at a disadvantage when it collided with Chu Ning's fist, it temporarily blocked Chu Ning's fist. This allowed Chu Fengmian to find an opportunity to dodge the fist. Scarlet Flame Sword? Chu Ning looked at the long sword in Chu Fengmian's hand, and his eyes were filled with surprise. You have quite a few good things on you. The Scarlet Flame Sword, one of the 3 great divine weapons of the Candle Flame sect, is also in your hands. But soon, when I kill you, this Scarlet Flame sword will belong to us. Chu Ming laughed heartily and sent another punch flying over. Chu Ning's spiritual energy was already at its peak. Punch after punch, he fiercely smashed towards Chu Fengmian. Not good. Han Yueli, who was nearby, was shocked when she saw this scene. Under this kind of pursuit, she was afraid that Chu Fengmian would not be able to last long before he was defeated. Her cry of surprise instantly attracted Chu Ning's attention. There's actually someone else? Looks like you're with this brat. Well then, since this brat is running away, I'll kill you first. Chu Ning laughed loudly and ignored Chu Fengmian. His figure moved and rushed towards Han Yueli. Die for me. In an instant, another punch was thrown. This punch was comparable to the power of the 8th level of the Spirit Sea realm. It was not something that Han Yueli could withstand. Oh no! Chu Fumian's eyes changed. Han Yueli was also sealed in this space by the heavenly sealing diagram and could not leave. Now, Chu Fumian could not withstand this punch and could only run away. It was even more impossible for Han Yueli to withstand it. The peak of sword intent, the infinite sword. Chu Fumian coldly spat out these 2 words. The aura on his body was completely different from before. This was the strongest sword intent that Chu Fumian could display. Chapter 179. In an instant, the tip of the sword slashed towards Chu Ming. This sword slashed towards Chu Ming almost soundlessly. The tip of the sword was sharp to the extreme. It was a real killing sword. Chu Fumian had been waiting for an opportunity to kill with a single strike before using this sword. With Chu Fumian's current strength, the strongest sword intent he could summon was this sword. Although Chu Fumian had the divine pulse, his spiritual energy was almost endless. This sword not only consumed spiritual energy, but also the sword intent that Chu Fumian cultivated in his previous life. This sword was enough to exhaust Chu Fumian. Chu Fumian was waiting for an opportunity to kill Chu Ning before using this sword. But now that Han Yueli was in danger, Chu Fumian could not wait any longer. This sword burst out ahead of time. Not good. Chu Ning was also a peerless genius, so he immediately felt the threat of this sword. He hurriedly retracted his fist and then punched towards the sword. Previously, in front of the Tongtian path, Chu Fumian used this sword to injure Zhiling Tian. The storm-like sword aura slashed towards Chu Ning's body. Each of these sword aura was incomparably sharp. Let me help you. Mysterious spatial gate. Chung Tiankong also roared and activated the divine map. A mysterious spatial gate was condensed and blocked in front of Chu Ning. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Thousands of sword chi slashed at the mysterious spatial gate. The mysterious spatial gate that was formed was riddled with holes and shattered in an instant. The most powerful sword aura slashed towards Chu Ning's hand. Swoosh! A finger suddenly flew out. Under Chu Fumian's sword, one of Chu Ning's fingers was cut off. Seeing this result, Chu Fumian's heart went cold. Originally, he planned to at least injure Chu Ning with this sword. Chu Fumian was not satisfied with just cutting off a finger. However, taking advantage of the moment when the sword was released, he was able to temporarily block Chu Ning and Chung Tiankong's attacks. His figure flashed as he grabbed Han Yueli and quickly fled. Run! 2 figures were moving through the forest at high speed. Damn it! Damn it! A piece of trash actually cut off one of my fingers. Chu Ning roared hysterically. That damn trash! I want him dead, even if he died countless times over. It could not offset Marshall's anger. I want him to taste all the tortures of the 9 regions. Although it wasn't difficult to recover a severed finger, Chu Ning was different. He was a body-tempering martial artist. All of his power came from his body. His body had been soaked in a lot of spiritual herbs in order to be as strong as it was now. Even if his severed finger had been regenerated by using spiritual herbs, it would have been impossible for it to grow back. Even Chu Ning would not be able to recover to his current strength. Such a loss would definitely cause Chu Ning to feel extremely pained. Not to mention that his finger was cut off by a body-tempering realm martial artist. This was an insult to his heart. That was why he was so hysterical. Brother Chu, don't worry. The surrounding few miles have been isolated by the sealed heaven divine map. Even if this kid escapes, he won't be able to escape. Chung Tiankong said from the side. His heart was also extremely shocked. That sword strike just now had even broken his spatial profound gate. And this was only Chu Fumian's body-tempering realm. If Chu Fumian stepped into the Divine Sea realm, or even the wind-controlling realm, who could block that sword just now? This kid, he's going to die. Chung Tiankong's eyes flashed with killing intent. The 2 of them once again chased in the direction Chu Fumian escaped in. Damn it, this sealed heaven divine map is really troublesome. The surrounding few miles of space are all sealed. Chu Fumian brought Han Yueli to the edge and was blocked by a transparent spatial barrier. Chu Fengyan could feel that this spatial barrier could not be broken unless it was an attack that reached the peak of the wind-controlling realm. With Chu Fengyan's current strength, it was impossible to break it. What made him even more anxious was that Chu Fengyan could already feel that Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong had already caught up to him. If the two of them caught up, Chu Fengyan would have no way to force them back. The time that this sword bought was already Chu Fengyan's last chance. This barrier can't be broken? Han Yueli also felt the spatial barrier in front of him and could not help but ask. Of course, this barrier is condensed by Cheng Tiankong using all his strength to activate the Sealed Heaven Divine Map. Unless the strength of the peak of the body-tempering realm reaches the full strength of the attack, it is impossible to tear the barrier apart. Chu Fengyan said anxiously. Now, even if he tried his best, he could not think of a way to break this barrier. Suddenly, Han Yueli, who was beside him, hesitated for a moment and said, "If I have a way to break this barrier, can you take me away?" "You have a way?" Chu Fengyan was shocked. Even he had no way to break this barrier. How could Han Yueli have a way? Chu Fengyan still wanted to say something, but Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong were almost catching up. This made Chu Fengyan have no time to continue asking. "If you can break this barrier, I promise to take you away," Chu Fengyan said resolutely. Now, he had no other way. He could only treat a dead horse as a living horse and pin his hopes on Han Yueli. "Okay, it's a deal." Han Yueli let out a soft shout. However, from her body, an ice-cold chill suddenly burst forth. Profound cold body? Looking at the chill on Han Yueli's body, Chu Fengyan suddenly thought of something. Profound cold body and ice lotus sword technique. Could it be that Han Yueli is going to... Before Chu Fengyan's voice died away, Han Yueli's spiritual power had begun to rise crazily. First level of the wind-controlling realm. Second level of the wind-controlling realm. Third level of the wind-controlling realm. Almost in an instant, Han Yueli's realm had risen to the 9th level of the wind-controlling realm. She was only one step away from the peak of the wind-controlling realm. This was already her limit. "Break!" Han Yueli shouted. The sword in her hand had already fallen. Under the tip of this sword, there's a bone-piercing chill. Even Chu Fengyan, who is standing beside Han Yueli, can feel the terrifying chill. He is so cold that he is shivering. The absolute sword of icy love. I didn't expect to see this move today. Chapter 180. 10,000 years ago, Chu Fengyan had seen this move before. After this move, a beautiful woman had died in front of Chu Fengyan. Back then, the 7 great sects had joined forces to set up a trap to kill the Lord of the Sword Tao. Many of Chu Fengyan's senior brothers and sisters had been hunted down by the 7 great sections. The one who had led Chu Fengyan to escape was his 4th senior sister. Faced with the pursuit of the 7 great sects experts, his 4th senior sister had risked her life to fight back. She had used the absolute sword of frozen love to kill several of the 7 great sects experts. The absolute sword of frozen love was the final and most powerful move of the Ice Lotus sword art. It was no wonder that Chu Fengyan felt a sense of familiarity when he looked at Han Yueli. Han Yueli was actually the same sword technique that Chu Fengyan's 4th senior sister had cultivated. Moreover, the two of them both possessed the profound cold body. The Ice Lotus sword art was created by Chu Fengyan's 4th senior sister, and now it had been passed down. The absolute sword of frozen love was so powerful that it could kill an opponent across a great realm. However, it could only be used once. No matter how strong the opponent was, the cold would enter their body. They would no longer be able to release spiritual energy, and the cold would gradually corrode their insides. In the end, they would die from the cold. Back then, his 4th senior sister had used this move to buy time for Chu Fengyan to escape. "Run!" Han Yueli's words pulled Chu Fengyan out of his memories. In front of him, a hole the size of a person had been torn open in the space barrier. This gap was still gradually shrinking, and it would quickly close up again. "Phantom!" Chu Fengyan grabbed Han Yueli, and with a movement technique, he directly passed through the gap. The barrier of the Sealed Heaven Divine Chart was broken. Cheng Tiankong frowned as he gave chase. "What?" These two brats have the ability to break the sealed heaven divine chart? Chu Ning's expression became even more ferocious. He had to avenge his severed finger today, not to mention that Chu Fengmian had the abundant lush steel. Chase them. Even if this brat has the ability to break the sealed heaven divine chart, he must have paid a great price. Today we must kill him. Chu Ming let out a furious roar as his entire body turned red. This was a sign of blood congestion. Chu Ming had already unleashed all the power in his body to the extreme. He was trying to catch up to Fengmian. Chu Fengmian took Han Yueli and fled. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong's figures. No, if this continues, they will catch us sooner or later. Although they had escaped from the sealed heaven divine chart, they were still in an extremely dangerous situation. Although Chu Fengmian was in the lead, behind him, Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong were much faster than Chu Fengmian. Now that he had Han Yueli with him, his speed was even slower. Of's chooses Chu of's lush of's heaven. If this continued, in less than 5 minutes, Chu Fengmian would be caught by Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong. How could he get rid of the two of them? Xing Xian. In a moment of desperation, Chu Fengmian could only awaken Xing Xian in his mind. At this time, Chu Fengmian could only think of Xing Xian. As long as the blood-slaughtering demon sword had his strength, it would be possible to get rid of the current situation. What's wrong, brat? I just slept for a while. How did you encounter such danger? Xing Xian's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. He observed the situation in front of him and suddenly found the dragon pellet in Chu Fengmian's hand. Oh, a dragon pellet. It seems that you have a great opportunity. If you can refine this dragon pellet, it will be of great benefit to your cultivation of the battle dragon art. Let's put this aside first. Do you have any way to help me get rid of the two people behind me? Chu Fengmian hurriedly said. Although he got the dragon pellet, Chu Fengmian's mind wasn't on it. Now, Chu Fengmian couldn't even protect himself. How could he care about the benefits of the dragon pellet? Being able to escape alive was Chu Fengmian's current goal. Get rid of the two people behind you? You want to borrow my power? Xing Xian said calmly when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Impossible, Xing Xian replied. My power is sealed by the Azure Wand, and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't be able to help you. That said, if you want to escape, it won't be too hard. Don't you have the Rich Lush steel? Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum isn't too far away. If you rush over, you'll be able to get into it. Leave that guy behind. Given your speed, it won't be difficult for you to get into the mausoleum before the two of them catch up. What? Originally, Chu Fengmian was pleasantly surprised when he heard the first two sentences. However, when he heard the last sentence, Chu Fengmian immediately rejected it. Leave the Han Yueli behind? Although the Han Yueli would slow Chu Fengmian down significantly, he would still be able to escape from the heaven-sealing god chart. After all, he was relying on the power of the Han Yueli. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian had promised Han Yueli that he would take her with him. There was no way Chu Fengmian would abandon her now. Chu Fengmian couldn't do that either. He would rather die in battle if he had to live like this. Is there really no other way? Chu Fengmian asked, unwilling to give up. There isn't, Xing Xian said coldly. Because of that guy, you've been slowed down by 30%. That should be enough for you to escape. It's just a matter of whether you want to do it or not. As a warrior, your own life is the most important thing. Surely you understand that? Xing Xian said coldly. It wasn't impossible for warriors to kill each other for the sake of personal gain. As for Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli, they didn't have much of a relationship. If it were any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't have given it much thought. No, I'm taking her with me, Chu Fengmian said with decisiveness that could sever nails and chop iron. But Chu Fengmian was Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian wouldn't do what others did. Therefore, there was no way he would abandon Han Yueli. Without Han Yueli, Chu Fengmian would already be in the heaven-sealing god chart, killed by Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong. He wouldn't even have been able to escape. Chapter 181. If Chu Fengmian abandoned Han Yueli, he wouldn't be able to cultivate any martial arts. He wouldn't even be able to live with himself. Chu Fengmian's path of martial arts was to protect those he wanted to protect. There has to be another way. Frowning, Chu Fengmian shot toward Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum as fast as he could. As long as Chu Fengyan could move a bit faster, it would be enough. Power. I need to be stronger. I can't die here. In my past life, I had no power, so I had to jump off a cliff and die. In this life, I can't die in such a cowardly way at the hands of others. Chu Fengyan murmured. Chu Fengyan's eyes were fixed on the Flood Dragon's dragon core. That dragon core was the only thing that could give Chu Fengyan power. Perhaps a Flood Dragon's dragon core could create miracles. Are you planning to consume that dragon core now? Xing Xian asked, his voice changing when he saw the look in Chu Fengyan's eyes. You need to think this through. It might only be a Flood Dragon's dragon core, but it's still a dragon core. A Windgate level dragon core. The power it contains is definitely not something you can handle right now. Perhaps if you swallow it, you will end up exploding and dying because you can't handle the power. Even if you cultivate the Dragon Slayer incantation, there's no way you can consume so much spiritual power in one go. All you have to do is abandon that woman, and you'll be able to escape. Why are you taking such a huge risk? Xing Xian's voice was filled with disbelief. Chu Fengyan obviously had a better choice, so why was he going all out? Was it because he wanted to take that woman away with him? Was it because of a promise? Or was it because she had saved his life? A dragon core contained nearly half of a Flood Dragon's spiritual power, and it was the purest of spiritual power. Even if he wanted to consume it, he would have to combine it with other spiritual herbs to harmonize the spiritual energy within. Otherwise, even a saint might explode in an instant. That was especially true now that Chu Fengyan was being chased. He didn't even have a safe place to rest. In such an environment, he swallowed and refined the dragon core. It would be suicide. Shut up, Chu Fengyan roared. It was impossible for him to abandon Han Yueli. Chu Fengyan had no other choice. Rather than dying in a cowardly manner, it was better to fight to the death. Chu Fengyan didn't even consider the possibility of death. Chu Fengyan opened his mouth and bit down on the dragon core. In a few bites, he swallowed the head-sized dragon core. Immediately after, he activated the battle dragon art and began to refine it. As soon as the dragon pill entered his mouth, Chu Fengyan felt an extremely large amount of spiritual energy gushing into his body almost instantly. This dragon pill was definitely much more effective than any other spiritual medicine in the world. If a wind-controlling realm martial artist were to refine the dragon pill, he would only be able to devour 1,000th of it at most. Any more, and he would be likely to be broken by the spiritual power in it. For someone like Chu Fengyan to swallow an entire dragon core in one go was simply an extremely crazy act. Especially now, Chu Fengyan couldn't put all his attention into refining the dragon pill. He still had to continue using the escape light to escape. Multitasking. For martial artists, these are the two most taboo things, but Chu Fengyan was doing them both. How could that kid's spiritual power suddenly increase? Could it be that he swallowed the dragon pill and refined it? Chung Tiankong looked at the sudden change in Chu Fengyan's spiritual power, which was bursting with the dragon's might. It didn't take long for him to figure out what was going on. Damn it, that's a dragon pill. I can't believe that kid actually swallowed it. Chu Ning's eyes were filled with jealousy. A dragon pill was worth hundreds of millions of energy-amassing pills. How could Chu Ning not go crazy when he saw such a fortune being swallowed right in front of him? The dragon pill was supposed to be his, but now it was taken away by Chu Fengyan, and he even swallowed it. Now, even if he killed Chu Fengyan, the dragon pill wouldn't come back. Damn it, I have to kill that kid today. I have to get his rich lush steel. Without the dragon pill, the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush will be ours. Chu Meng roared angrily as he increased his speed to give chase. Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengyan, completely speechless. Only a lunatic would choose to swallow and refine the dragon pill under such circumstances. Such a person, out of the countless people that Xing Xian had met, had never appeared before. That was especially true now. Chu Fengyan didn't even make a sound as he endured the pain of the dragon pill. It was almost as if Chu Fengyan wasn't the one suffering. I, Chu Fengyan, am not going to die in a place like this. Chu Fengmian's body was already filled with spiritual power, which was battering him madly. The spiritual energy of this dragon core was definitely comparable to the sum of tens of millions of chi amassing pills, or even more. Even the ancient war dragon shadow in Chu Fengmian's body was not as fast as the power released by the dragon elixir when it was devouring such a huge amount of spiritual power. In just a few moments, Chu Fengmian's body began to swell, as if he were being pumped full of air. In this state, Chu Fengmian could explode at any moment. No, I can't die. I have to live. I won't die. Chu Fengmian roared madly in his heart. He had already pushed the battle dragon technique to the limit, constantly devouring the spiritual power in the dragon pill. His flesh and blood had burst open, and his entire body was dripping with blood. It was unknown how many wounds he had sustained. Chu Fengmian's blood could be seen everywhere he went. Phantom. While enduring the great pain, Chu Fengmian still activated the phantom movement technique once again. His spiritual power had already expanded to the limit. He wanted to see what kind of speed this spiritual power could achieve. Whoosh! A figure flashed. Chu Fengmian's speed was now more than twice as fast as before. This speed was enough to surpass Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong's escape light. Success! Chu Fengmian's eyes finally showed some joy. Chu Fengmian's desperate struggle finally had an effect. Such an escape light was enough to shake off the two people. At the same time, in front of Chu Fengmian, an incomparably huge array appeared. Behind this array was a huge mausoleum. Rather than calling it a mausoleum, it was better to call it a huge cave. Chapter 182. That brat is trying to get into Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum. No, we have to stop him. He has the Rich Lush steel. If he gets it, it'll be a big problem for us. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong exchanged a few words. Then both of them roared at the same time. Burning their quintessence blood, they shot forward at twice the speed they had before. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong had no intention of letting Chu Fengmian go. As the distance between them gradually increased, unexpectedly, they were burning their own quintessence blood to increase their power. It was a life and death struggle. Clearly, they were determined to kill Chu Fengmian. The hatred between Chu Fengmian, Chu Ning, and Cheng Tiankong was irreconcilable, and there was no way to resolve it. Chu Fengmian's latent talent was terrifying to the extreme. He was only in the body-tempering realm, yet he had such terrifying power. If they allowed him to get into Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum, he would definitely become a big problem for them. No matter what, he had to kill Chu Fengmian today. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong were burning their quintessence blood, and their spiritual power was close to the peak of the wind control realm. In just a few moments, they had caught up to Chu Fengmian. I can't believe they're going to chase me to death. Damn it. If I can survive this calamity, I will definitely kill the two of them. I'll destroy the family Chu and the Cheng clan. Chu Fengmian roared, his heart filled with the desire to kill. Even though he had already pushed the spiritual energy of the dragon core to the limit and wanted to escape, Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong's figures behind him were gradually catching up. They were getting closer and closer, and in the blink of an eye, they would catch up. Stop running, brat. The more you run, the closer you'll be to death. Cheng Tiankong laughed coldly, then blurred into motion to appear in front of Chu Fengmian. Freeze, Cheng Tiankong said, waving the heaven-sealing god chart in his hand. In the blink of an eye, several barriers appeared around Chu Fengmian, trapping him. Heaven-sealing god chart, freeze. Cheng Tiankong held the divine map in his hand and snorted coldly. An incomparably powerful spatial force pressed down on Chu Fengmian. Under the restraint of this spatial energy, Chu Fengmian couldn't even move. Every move he made was under great pressure. Kid, hand over the boundless lush steel. There's no need to struggle anymore. Cheng Tiankong looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. He knew that Chu Fengmian had the rich lush steel, but he had no idea where he had hidden it. In your dreams, Chu Fengmian said coldly. There was no way he would hand over the richly lush steel. Even if Chu Fengmian were to die today, he would never willingly hand it over. Even if he were to die, he would not let his enemy have their way. Brother Chung, why are you wasting your time with this brat? Let's kill him and refine his soul. Everything he has will be ours. Chu Meng also caught up, his face revealing a hint of viciousness. I'm also interested in his swordsmanship. After killing him, I'll extract his soul and burn it within flames every day. He'll eventually spill the beans. All right. Chung Tiankong didn't waste any more words. He glanced coldly at Chu Fengyan. I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the rich lush steel, and I'll let you die a quick death. If you want to kill me, then come. Chu Fengyan roared before Chung Tiankong could finish. He had already pushed the power of the battle dragon technique to the limit. 5 drops of the primordial battle dragon's blood essence were burning. Chu Fengyan's eyes were as red as blood, and his aura was like that of a battle dragon. This Chu Fengyan is truly a monstrous genius. He possesses the strength of a dragon with the body of a human. His draconic aura is even stronger than that of the serpent dragon. Chung Tiankong looked at Chu Fengyan and muttered to himself. Even the Zhiling Tian of the past could not achieve such a terrifying level of strength. Unfortunately, he's a threat to both our clans. Today we must kill him, Chu Meng said coldly. As an enemy with terrifying aptitude like Chu Fengyan must be killed. If Chu Fengyan wasn't killed today, there would be endless trouble in the future. Die. Chu Meng moved his feet and approached Chu Fengyan. His whole body was like a raging bull, ramming over. Boom! Chu Meng condensed all of his strength in this collision. One of his fingers was cut off by Chu Fengyan. Now, he was extremely weak. Therefore, he chose to use the strength of his whole body to kill Chu Fengyan. At the same time, Chung Tiankong had also made his move. The divine map of sealing heaven condensed in his hand. Suddenly, the pressure on Chu Fengyan increased tenfold, or even 100-fold. Suddenly, Chu Fengyan's whole body was covered, making him unable to move. Chung Tiankong and Chu Meng were both the true core disciples of Wuxing Academy. The two of them together could even fight against Ling Tian. Under the pressure of these two forces, Chu Fengyan's body was about to be torn apart. So what if you're a peerless genius? If you're not strong enough, you'll still die today. Chu Meng roared angrily. The strength of his whole body had been pushed to the limit. Under the wind of his fist, Chu Fengyan's chest was smashed open. If it weren't for the power of the battle dragon art, the current Chu Fengyan would have been killed by the punch just now. Your aptitude is indeed unprecedented, but you made a mistake, which is to provoke our Chung family, Family Chu. The power of a family is not something you can contend against alone. Today, your death is already destined. Chung Tiankong looked at Chu Fengyan and said coldly, Chung family? Family Chu. If I, Chu Fengyan, don't die today, the two of you, your families. I, Chu Fengyan, will kill all of you, not leaving a single one alive. Chu Fengyan's voice was squeezed out from between his teeth. His body was enduring the impact of the dragon pellet's spiritual energy and Chu Meng's fist wind at the same time. Almost every time he opened his mouth, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Chu Meng roared angrily. The spiritual energy in his body had already gathered on his fist, and he suddenly punched out. Azure Tyrant Fist. The terrifying fist wind carried endless power as it smashed towards Chu Fengyan's body. This kid is dead for sure. Chung Tiankong looked at Chu Meng's fist and shook his head. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for Chu Fengyan to have any means to block Chu Meng's fist. Boom! Chapter 183. In the face of this fist strike, even a 5th stage Imperial Wind Realm cultivator would be killed beyond the shadow of a doubt. After all, Chu Ning wasn't the only one attacking. Chung Tiankong was helping him. With the heaven-sealing God chart weighing down on him, even a 5th stage Imperial Wind Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to stand up to it. Furthermore, Chu Fengyan was far from being in the 5th stage of the Imperial Wind Realm. Given the circumstances, Chu Fengyan would be dead beyond the shadow of a doubt. He's gone. By the time the fist wind dissipated, Chu Fengyan was nowhere to be seen. Only a few bloodstains could be seen on the ground. You must have killed him with a single punch, right? Chung Tiankong scanned the area with his divine sense and confirmed that there was no trace of Chu Fengyan's aura. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for Chu Fengyan to escape. There was only one possibility, and that was that Chu Fengyan had been completely annihilated. There wasn't even a scrap of him left behind. It's too bad we didn't get the rich, lush steel, Chu Ning said, sounding a bit frustrated. The kid is dead, so the rich, lush steel must have disappeared along with him. Grand Emperor Rich Lush personally created that spirit treasure. Don't worry about it. Compared to the rich, lush steel, the legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush is far more important. Chung Tiankong waved his hand dismissively. Now that the rich, lush steel is gone, all we have to do is break the warding spells in the mausoleum and get the legacy. Who in this holy land could possibly be a match for us? The legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush is definitely ours. Let's go. Young Sir Flame South and the others are all eyeing the legacy of Grand Emperor Rich Lush covetously. We have to get in before them, Chung Tiankong said. Then, his figure flashed and left. Now that the rich, lush steel was gone, there was no reason for him to stay. With that, Chu Ning looked over at Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum, then turned and left. After the two of them left, everything was quiet again. However, the bloodstains on the ground made it clear that a great battle had taken place. Where am I? Chu Fengyan opened his eyes and looked at the unfamiliar surroundings. In this strange space, Chu Fengyan didn't know how long he had been sleeping. Perhaps a week, perhaps a month. It was only when Chu Fengyan woke up that he noticed that everything around him was so unfamiliar. Han Yueli's body was also lying beside Chu Fengyan. Her body was now incomparably cold. Chu Fengyan could feel the bone-piercing cold just by lying beside her. Have you escaped? Chu Fengyan looked at the quiet surroundings and whispered to himself. Oomph. If you hadn't been lucky enough to awaken at the same time as the richly lush monument, do you really think you would have survived? Xing Xian said unhappily in Chu Fengyan's mind. For a woman, you almost lost your life. How'd I end up with a master like you? The rich lush monument? Chu Fengyan naturally ignored Xing Xian's complaints. It was only now that he noticed a stone tablet the size of a person beside him. It was none other than the rich lush monument he had acquired from the ancient dragon turtle. Now it was fully awake. After Chu Fengyan had entered the Holy Land, the rich lush monument had gradually awakened due to the presence of Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum. As soon as it realized that Chu Fengyan was in danger, it woke up. Chu Fengyan and Han Yueli were sucked into the rich lush monument, allowing them to avoid Chu Ning's final fist strike. Are we in Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum? Chu Fengyan said, looking around and sensing the spiritual power in the area. Unexpectedly, the rich lush monument had taken Chu Fengyan and Han Yueli into the mausoleum. My power? Chu Fengyan said, rising to his feet. It was almost as if he were filled with boundless power. Suddenly, his mind trembled as he looked at the illusory image of the ancient war dragon. Shockingly, there were 10 drops of quintessence blood within that illusory image. It seemed that Chu Fengyan hadn't died. Instead, he had absorbed all of the spiritual power within the dragon core. As a result, he now had 5 drops of quintessence blood. It was a blessing in disguise. Thanks to the 10 drops of quintessence blood, Chu Fengyan's cultivation level had reached the first level of the Divine Sea Realm. Although he had only just reached the Divine Sea Realm, Chu Fengyan could sense that his strength had undergone a heaven-shaking, earth-toppling transformation. Chu Fengyan's current strength was probably more than 10 times stronger than before. If he were to run into Chu Ning or Chung Tiankong again, even if he couldn't defeat them, he would at least be able to fight them and escape unscathed. Now that I'm in the Divine Sea Realm, I should be able to use the rich lush monument. Chu Fengyan's mind trembled. Now that the rich lush monument had awakened, as long as he had enough power, he should be able to use it. Move! Chu Fengyan looked at the rich lush monument. With a thought, he injected a surge of spiritual power into the monument, intending to activate it. However, The rich, lush monument remained motionless in its original position. Chu Fengmian's spiritual power was like a stone sinking into the ocean. What's going on? Humph. This rich, lush monument isn't some trash spiritual artifact. It's a low-grade, heaven-grade spiritual artifact. How could you possibly activate it with your current strength? Xing Xian mocked in Chu Fengmian's mind. Only if you're in the wind-controlling realm and your strength is close to that of a saint would you be able to activate it. Take a look at your storage pouch. Storage pouch? Chu Fengmian frowned. He opened his storage pouch and looked inside. Inside the pouch, which was originally filled with quintessence-gathering pills, there was an obvious gap. About a tenth of it was missing. This storage pouch contained 1,000,000 quintessence-gathering pills that Chu Fengmian had obtained from the Northwest Barrenlands. A tenth of it was equivalent to 100,000 quintessence-gathering pills missing. This is the amount of spiritual power you need to activate the rich, lush monument once. Xing Xian's voice rang out again. Although you're the master of the rich, lush monument now, you can't activate it with your current strength. Every time you activate the rich, lush monument, you'll need 100,000 quintessence-gathering pills to replenish it. So, if you want to use the rich, lush monument's power, you'd better think carefully. 100,000 quintessence-gathering pills would be consumed every time it was activated. Chapter 184. Every time he activated the richly lush steel, it would cost him 100,000 energy-amassing pills. Chu Fengmian thought that with the richly lush steel awakened, he would have a new source of help. Who would have thought that he would have another big appetite? Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had broken through with the help of the Flood Dragon's pill, so he hadn't used up any energy-amassing pills. This way, Chu Fengmian wouldn't run out of energy-amassing pills for the time being. In case of emergency, he would be able to activate the richly lush steel. Although Chu Fengmian wasn't sure how powerful the richly lush steel was, as a heaven-grade spirit artifact, it was definitely powerful. Although he couldn't use the richly lush steel often, it was still a trump card for Chu Fengmian. If he was in danger, he would have a way to deal with it. Why don't you take a look at the woman you brought here? Xing Xian's voice suddenly turned cold. Chu Fengmian calmed down, then suddenly thought of something. He quickly turned his head to look at Han Yueli. The current Han Yueli looked like an ice sculpture. Her entire body was extremely cold. Although Chu Fengmian could still feel that she was still alive, she was still very cold. But now, she looked no different from a dead person. This woman's body is already invaded by cold energy. She's not far from death. In order to save a woman with cold energy, she almost lost her life. I really don't know if she's stupid or not. Xing Xian said unhappily in his mind. Shut up. Chu Fengmian frowned and snorted. He looked at Han Yueli again. Han Yueli wasn't dead yet, but her body had already been invaded by cold energy. Even her internal organs were affected. She was in a state of suspended animation. I want to save her, Chu Fengmian said. Han Yueli had used the absolute sword of frozen love in order to save him. No matter what, Chu Fengmian couldn't just sit by and watch. You want to save her? A woman with cold energy in her body? Xing Xian snorted when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Even if the strongest alchemist in the 9 realms, the Medicine King's sex medicine god, came, he might not be able to save her. Her internal organs have already been corroded by the cold air. What makes you so confident that you can save her? The divine alchemist can't save him, but that doesn't mean I can't, Chu Fengmian said coldly. At the same time, he took out his storage bag. From within, he took out stock after stock of elixirs and placed them in front of him. At the same time, he also took out Han Yueli's storage bag. Countless spiritual herbs were taken out by Chu Fengmian and placed to the side. These were the herbs he had collected from the sacred grounds. Chu Fengmian didn't expect it to come in handy so soon. Scorching grass, warm jade bamboo, melting clear leaf. Chu Fengmian looked at each of the spirit herbs in front of him and analyzed them one by one. These elixirs are already enough to wake her up and temporarily maintain her life. What are you trying to do? Xing Xian asked curiously as he watched Chu Fengmian take out one spiritual herb after another. Alchemy, Chu Fengmian calmly replied as he neatly arranged the elixirs in front of him. With a move of his mind, a surge of spiritual energy pulsed in Chu Fengmian's palm. A golden flame burned. Innate fire spirit. Now that Chu Fumian had stepped into the divine sea realm, he naturally had the ability to control the five-element spirit. However, the flame that Chu Fumian condensed this time was no ordinary flame. Instead, it was a special flame with a much higher temperature. In this flame, there was a bit of dragon's might. Dragon flame? This is a flame that only the true dragon clan can control. Chu Fumian was a little surprised. He didn't expect to be able to summon dragon flame. Of course it's dragon flame. Do you think your body is still human? Xing Xian said. The blood flowing in your body is the blood of the ancient war dragon. The flame that you condense is naturally dragon flame. Dragon flame. With dragon flame, the effect of refining elixirs should be able to reach a higher level. Chu Fumian was delighted. He had refined countless elixirs in his previous life. Naturally, he knew the importance of this flame. The grade of elixir refining was closely related to the flame needed. For example, the material needed to refine a heaven-grade elixir could not be melted by ordinary flames. In his previous life, although Chu Fumian had refined countless elixirs and had almost stepped into the peak of refining elixirs, he had never refined a heaven-grade elixir. The reason was that Chu Fumian didn't have spiritual power and couldn't control the powerful flame. With the flame of the elixir furnace, refining an earth-grade elixir was the limit. Therefore, even if he had the ability to refine a heaven-grade elixir, he had never succeeded. With this dragon flame, Chu Fumian had more confidence in refining elixirs for Han Yueli. Melt. Chu Fumian sat on the ground and spread out his left hand. A ball of golden dragon flame was dancing on his left hand. Chu Fumian carefully put one of the spiritual herbs into it. Suddenly, the spiritual herb melted when it came in contact with the hot dragon flame. There were already signs of it being burned. Down. Chu Fumian urged the dragon flame to lower the temperature. When it came to refining elixirs, if the temperature was too low, it wouldn't be able to melt them completely. But if the temperature was too high, the elixir would be destroyed. These spiritual herbs had been harvested from the Holy Land, and Chu Fumian wasn't sure if he could find any more in Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum. Any one of them would be extremely precious, and he definitely couldn't afford to waste them. As the temperature of the flame dropped, the elixir of the spiritual herb began to stabilize. Chu Fumian waved his hand, expelling the black impurities and turning the elixir into a pure green color. Done, Chu Fumian said. Chu Fumian muttered to himself. He took out a jade bottle and poured all of the medicinal liquid into it. At the same time, he pulled out another spiritual herb and placed it into the flame. Melt, quench, extract, pour. Chu Fumian was doing the same thing dozens of times. All the while, he was melting all the spirit medicines around him into medicinal liquid. By this point, Chu Fumian didn't even have a single spiritual herb to be seen, only jade bottles filled with elixir. Now it's time to really start the concocting. Concocting medicine was something Chu Fumian knew very well, and yet, as soon as he started, he felt nervous. After all, none of these spiritual herbs could be replaced. There were only so many of them, and how many he could concoct would determine how long Han Yueli would live. Concoct. Chapter 185. Time passed by second. Chu Fumian's forehead was covered in sweat, dripping onto the ground. He sat on the spot, motionless. All his attention was on the flame in his left hand. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. After a full 6 hours, the medicinal liquid that had been slowly condensing in the flames finally completely fused together and then separated. It separated into 3 pills the size of a longan. The elixir is about to be formed. Looking at the 3 longan-sized pills, Chu Fumian frowned. The medicinal liquid could only be refined 4 times at most, which meant that there were only about 12 pills. One of the pills could sustain Han Yueli's life for a day. Even if all the pills were refined, it could only sustain Han Yueli's life for about 12 days. The time was too short. No, I must strengthen the medicinal efficacy, Chu Fumian said in his heart. Suddenly, his right hand made a cut and a small wound appeared. 3 drops of golden blood flowed out from his wound. Following Chu Fengyan's thought, they dripped into the 3 pills. The 3 drops of golden blood and the medicinal liquid merged and condensed again. This time, it took him another 2 hours. The medicinal liquid and the golden blood finally started to condense and merge. Condense. Chu Fengyan's thought moved, and the medicinal liquid began to condense. The condensing of the pills was the last and most important step. Chu Fengyan did not dare to relax. His mind was tense. He waited until the 3 pills were perfectly condensed. Only then did Chu Fengyan let out a sigh of relief. He collected all of the pills and held them in his hand. The ancient war dragon's blood essence is enough to raise the grade of the pills. In terms of medicinal efficacy, it is at least 3 times stronger. Looking at the pills in his hand, Chu Fengyan was very satisfied. With the medicinal potency increased by 3 times, this single pill was enough to sustain Han Yuli's life for 3 days. This way, once all the pills were refined, it would be enough to sustain Han Yuli's life for at least a month. A month's time might be enough for Chu Fengyan to find a way to solve the cold energy in Han Yuli's body. After refining this batch of pills, Chu Fengyan did not take any rest. He condensed the flame again. He still had a lot of medicinal liquid with him. Now, Chu Fengyan must refine all the medicinal liquid into pills. One day, during this day, Chu Fengyan didn't stop refining this pill. He had been constantly refining this pill. Phew! When the last pill was refined, Chu Fengyan finally let out a sigh of relief. Looking at the 15 pills in his hand, Chu Fengyan's heart. These 15 pills were all that could be concocted using the current spiritual herbs. 15 pills should be enough to sustain Han Yuli's life for 1.5 months. It's time to wake her up. Even if she's dead, I must find out the truth about the Ice Lotus Sword Art. Chu Fengyan walked towards Han Yuli and whispered to himself. He was trying his best to save Han Yuli, not only because Han Yuli had just saved his life, but also because of a very important reason. Over there was Han Yuli's sword art. Where did the Ice Lotus Sword Art come from? This sword art should only be known by Chu Fengyan's 4th senior sister. How could it be passed down? Could it be that 4th senior sister did not die at that time? 10,000 years ago, everyone that Chu Fengyan knew had died. There was no news about them. Therefore, Chu Fengyan must find out any relevant information. In order to find out everything, Chu Fengyan must ask Han Yuli clearly. A pill was put into Han Yuli's mouth. Chu Fengyan sat beside him, quietly meditating and waiting. 5 minutes later, the chill on Han Yuli's body became weaker and weaker. Gradually, his body was not as cold and stiff as before. After a full 2 hours, Han Yuli's face finally regained some color. Although it was pale beyond belief, there were still some changes in it. Cough, cough. 2 coughs suddenly came, which attracted Chu Fengyan's attention. Awake! Chu Fengyan looked at Han Yuli and said with a smile on his face, "If you didn't wake up, I would have thought that there was something wrong with the pill I refined. I am not dead." Han Yuli gradually got up. He felt that his body was not as cold as he imagined. The chill on my body disappeared? No, it was suppressed by some power. Han Yuli scanned her body and understood that Bin Fei's cold aura had disappeared. Instead, it was because an ancient spiritual energy had been temporarily suppressed. "You were the one who saved me." Han Yuli raised her head and looked at Chu Fengyan beside her. She asked in confusion, "Where are we?" "This is Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum," Chu Fengyan replied. "As for you, I was the one who saved you. Otherwise, do you really think that you could have survived after using absolute Sword of Frozen Love?" Chu Fengyan looked at Han Yuli helplessly. He hadn't expected Han Yuli's method to be this move. Otherwise, even if Chu Fengyan had chosen to swallow the dragon pill and risk his life, he wouldn't have let Han Yuli use it. "Absolute Sword of Frozen Love? How did you know about my sword technique?" Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, Han Yuli suddenly asked. Unexpectedly, Chu Fengyan had called out his sword technique. The Ice Lotus Sword technique wasn't a technique from the frigid snow pavilion, but rather something passed down from Han Yuli's ancestors. Supposedly, it belonged to one of her ancestors. How did Chu Fengyan know about it? This sword technique was once used by a relative of mine. That's how I know about it. Chu Fengmian didn't expect Han Yueli to ask such a question. He suddenly thought about it and said, back when he had been a subordinate of the Lord of the Sword Dao, Chu Fengmian's elder brothers and sisters had taken great care of him. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had been an orphan and had been adopted by the Lord of the Sword Dao. Back then, the Lord of the Sword Dao had been the #1 figure in the Dao of the Sword, so he didn't have the time to take care of Chu Fengmian. Therefore, it was his elder brothers and sisters who had taken care of him. His elder brothers and sisters really were Chu Fengmian's family. Family? Where's your family now? Han Yueli asked. Dead. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered with loneliness. Chapter 186. My swordsmanship was actually passed down by my ancestor. Han Yueli said. It is said that my ancestor once met a woman in blue, and that woman taught it to my ancestor. Woman in blue. Chu Fengmian's eyes changed. His fourth senior sister was usually dressed in blue. There was no problem with Han Yueli's description. Could it be that his fourth senior sister didn't die in the hands of the 7 major sects at that time and actually survived? If she had really survived with fourth senior sister's cultivation at that time, she might still be alive after 10,000 years. A saint could live for 10,000 years. Not to mention that Chu Fengmian's fourth senior sister at that time was more than a saint. Do you still know about that woman in blue? Chu Fengmian didn't give up and asked. What Chu Fengmian wanted most now was to see his former senior brother and senior sister. No matter who it was, Chu Fengmian hoped to see any one of them. How would I know about something that happened 10,000 years ago? Han Yueli shook his head and said, I know these things from the ancient books of my family. Could it be that the woman in blue is related to your relatives? But she's a person from 10,000 years ago. Yes, it happened 10,000 years ago. Chu Fengmian sighed and felt a little disappointed. Indeed, he shouldn't have too much hope. Things had changed 10,000 years ago, and Chu Fengmian didn't know what had happened. Chu Fengmian had to focus on improving his strength first. Only with enough strength could Chu Fengmian walk out of this Wuxing country and go to a more prosperous area to find out what happened back then. These elixirs are for you. Chu Fengmian got up and handed all the elixirs in his hand to Han Yueli. Each of these elixirs is enough to suppress the frost chi in your body for 3 days. However, you can't use your Ice Lotus sword art now. The frost chi has already entered your body. If you use your spiritual energy, you will only die. Did you refine these elixirs? Han Yueli took the elixirs and looked at Chu Fengmian in surprise. You have a way to suppress the cold in my body? This is something that even the drug god can't do. Han Yueli also knew the consequences of the cold entering the body after the Ice Love Sword was activated. Originally, the cold could not be stopped at all. It would only spread to the internal organs. It would only end when the person's internal organs were completely frozen and the person died. She had never heard of anyone who could suppress the cold in the body. In the past, one of her seniors had used the absolute Ice Love Sword, and the cold chi had entered his body. However, that senior had gone to the top alchemist of the 9 realms, the medicine god of the Medicine King sect, to no avail. A little fellow like Chu Fengmian, who was not even 20 years old, was actually able to do something that even the divine medicine couldn't do. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that we don't have any spiritual medicine right now, I'm confident that I can expel your cold chi. Han Yueli words. Chu Han Yueli, drug god of? In the past, the drug god of the Medicine King sect had asked Chu Fengmian for advice on the Tao of medicine concocting. But in his past life, Chu Fengmian didn't have enough spirit power to concoct heavenly-class medicinal pills. After all, the position of drug god wasn't his. That said, Chu Han Yueli said, looking at Grand Emperor Richlush's tomb, perhaps we can find some of the treasures left behind by him. Maybe we can find some spirit medicine that can cure the cold in your body. Chu Fengmian glanced at Han Yueli and suddenly said, Come here and sit down. Although I can't completely expel the cold in your body, I can suppress it for now. Okay. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli obediently walked over and sat in front of Chu Fengmian. By this point, she had begun to trust Chu Fengmian unconditionally. After seeing all the miraculous things he had done, she was convinced that everything he said was true. Even when Chu Fengmian said that he would help her expel the cold in her body, Han Yueli didn't refute him. You can't tell anyone about what happened, Chu Fengyan said. Otherwise, forget it. Even if you want to talk about it in this tomb, no one can. Chu Fengyan was talking to himself. The medicinal pills that Chu Fengyan had concocted could only suppress the cold. However, Han Yueli's body was still filled with cold, and it continued to corrode her body. If he wanted Han Yueli to live, he had to get rid of the cold. Without any spirit medicine, Chu Fengyan had no choice but to use his own unique method. Sword. A monstrous sword intent suddenly emerged from Chu Fengyan's body. That sword will then slammed into Han Yueli. What a terrifying sword intent, this sword intent, she exclaimed. It's terrifying to the extreme. Han Yueli's eyes suddenly opened. She had never seen such a sword before. Han Yueli was also a sword cultivator, so she naturally knew how terrifying this sword intent was. This kind of sword intent, even if those true experts of the sword came, they might not necessarily have it. How many secrets does Chu Fengyan have? Don't think too much. Concentrate on condensing the cold in your body. Chu Fengyan's shout pulled Han Yueli back from her thoughts. She hurriedly condensed all the cold in her body into a single point. At the same time, within Han Yueli's body, the massive sword intent had turned into a giant snake that could devour the heavens, trying to devour Han Yueli's body. Godly sky-devouring python. Chu Fengyan used the ever-changing sword will to condense a godly sky-devouring python in Han Yueli's body. The godly sky-devouring python was known as the godly sky-devouring beast. In ancient times, it could devour the heavens. Chu Fengyan also borrowed some of the power of the godly sky-devouring python. The cold poison in Han Yueli's body was devoured little by the godly sky-devouring python. Finally, the remaining cold poison was completely devoured. Phew! When Chu Fengyan withdrew the sword will, he also felt a little tired. Even though Chu Fengyan had stepped into the divine sea realm, using such ever-changing sword will did indeed consume a great deal of his spirit. This time, the devouring was enough to prevent Han Yueli from being corroded by the cold poison for at least 3 days. Together with the effect of elixir, it was enough to stop the cold poison from harming Han Yueli. 3 days later, when you swallow the next elixir, I will help you devour the cold poison again. Chapter 187. You don't need to expend so much energy to absorb the frigid toxins in me. Han Yueli sat beside Chu Fengyan and muttered to herself as she watched Chu Fengyan recover. Extending my life for another month and a half is already extremely benevolent of you. There's no need to expend so much energy. Cold qi entered her body. In the eyes of ordinary people, Han Yueli could be said to be half dead. That was especially true considering that she had no relationship with Chu Fengyan, so there was no need for him to go to such lengths to save her. In fact, it would be fair to say that Chu Fengyan had already been benevolent enough to take her away. If it were any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't have brought such a burden with them to escape. I promised you that I would take you away. Chu Fengyan opened his eyes and looked at Han Yueli with a smile. Of course I'm not going to let you die. In the end, Han Yueli had saved Chu Fengyan's life. Without her, Chu Fengyan would have perished. In that case, Chu Fengyan would trade his life for Han Yueli's. Actually, there's another thing. You look a lot like that relative of mine. Chu Fengyan said softly. Ice lotus, sword technique, profound frigid body. Han Yueli was almost exactly the same as his elder fourth sister. Perhaps that was why Chu Fengyan had chosen to save Han Yueli. Let's go, he said. Let's see what's in Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum. If we can find some spirit medicines, I might be able to concoct a pill to neutralize the frigid toxins in you. Chu Fengyan rose to his feet and looked at Han Yueli. Follow me closely. You can't use any spiritual power, so you're no different from an ordinary person. Chu Fengyan rose to his feet and began to walk deeper into the mausoleum. They were still on the edge of the mausoleum, and no one knew what was hidden there. Han Yueli watched Chu Fengyan leave, and after a moment of hesitation, she followed closely behind. Although she didn't want to, she had no spiritual power and could only follow Chu Fengyan in the mausoleum. What's more, Han Yueli's heart was filled with hope. Rumor has it that Chu Fengyan is vicious, merciless, and incomparably arrogant. He is simply like a demon. Now that I've seen him, apart from his arrogance, he is completely different from the rumors. Han Yueli thought to himself. Chu Fengyan's name had long been known by the four great sections. If someone like Chu Fengyan could still be considered a demon, then there would be no good martialists in the world. At the very least, Han Yueli didn't believe that there would be someone like Chu Fengyan who would rather die than abandon her in such a dangerous situation. Although she was unconscious, Han Yueli still had some memories of that time, so she was naturally clear. When Chu Fengyan chose to swallow the dragon pill and fight to the death rather than abandon her, her heart was already somewhat moved. Unfortunately, it's impossible between us. Han Yueli muttered to himself, "Hurry up and get out of here. If you run into any danger, I won't be able to help you." Chu Fengyan called out to Han Yueli. In response, Han Yueli hurried after Chu Fengyan. Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum wasn't really a mausoleum, but rather an enormous cavern. Looking around, Chu Fengyan could see that there were over 1,000 passageways, all of which branched off in different directions. As for where they led, Chu Fengyan wasn't even sure. The walls of the cavern were covered with drawings of a tall, burly man who had fought 10,000 enemies alone, expanding his territory. Looking at the drawings made it seem as if Chu Fengyan was there, and he could sense how powerful the man was. These drawings probably record the founding of the martial victory kingdom by Grand Emperor Richlush. Rumble. Even as Chu Fengyan was looking at the drawings, a massive rumbling sound echoed out. Countless auras instantly surged into the tomb, following the loud rumbles. The warding spells outside have been broken. Chu Fengyan's face immediately changed. Through his spiritual consciousness, he had already sensed that there were countless warriors pouring into the mausoleum. From the look of it, the warding spells of Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum had been broken. Chu Fengyan had originally planned to study the mausoleum a bit more, but now he wasn't in the mood to do so. "Come with me. We have to get to Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure before those people do." Chu Fengyan looked over at Han Yueli, then grabbed Han Yueli's arm and used the phantom shadow body technique to speed through the mausoleum. He could already sense that the Richlush steel was leading him to the true location of Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure storehouse. "You!" Han Yueli blushed when she saw Chu Fengyan grabbing her arm. After all, no man had ever dared to grab her arm like that. She opened her mouth to say something, but then decided against it. Earlier, Chu Fengyan had been carrying Han Yueli with one arm, so it wasn't a big deal for him to grab her arm again. Chu Fengyan's figure traveled through the cave. After traveling for 100 miles, he suddenly saw a stone chamber in front of him. There were countless restrictions engraved on the stone chamber. However, the majority of those restrictions had been damaged by the passage of time. Break. Drawing on his spiritual power, Chu Fengyan punched out. The warding spells covering the door of the stone chamber shattered, and Chu Fengyan punched a hole in them. Through the gap, Chu Fengyan looked inside. There was a shelf neatly arranged. On the shelf, there were a large number of jade bottles. Each bottle was filled with a milky white elixir. Chu Fengyan extended his hand and made a grabbing motion. Immediately, one of the jade bottles fell into his hand. Chu Fengyan opened the jade bottle, and an extremely pure spiritual energy assaulted his nose. "These are gold spirit pills," he said. "They're true cultivation pills from the 9 realms. A single one is equivalent to over 100 energy convergence pills." It only took Chu Fengyan a single glance to identify the origin of the pills. Energy convergence pills were actually pills concocted by the Institute of Martial Victory in the nation of Martial Victory, and weren't very effective. In the 9 realms, the medicinal pills that were commonly used were of a higher level. This kind of golden spirit pill was a very popular pill. It could be traded in various countries, and its effect was far better than that of the Qi gathering pill. Chapter 188. On the shelves in the stone room, there were over 100 jade bottles, each filled with golden spirit pills. At a glance, there were at least 10,000 golden spirit pills. Great! Chu Fengyan's face lit up. He could now activate the richly lush steel, but every time he did so, he would need to consume a large amount of pills. Now, that he could collect this batch of golden spirit pills, it would be enough to support Chu Fengmian's consumption. Furthermore, the purity of the golden spirit pills' spiritual energy far surpassed that of the energy-amassing pill, making it much more effective for cultivation. With a wave of his hand, Chu Fengmian collected all the golden spirit pills in the room and placed them in his storage pouch. Chu Fengmian glanced at Han Yueli and said, "These pills are useless to me. These pills are of no use to you at the moment, so I'll take them. I don't have much time left. Even if you give me these pills, they're meaningless. Just take them." Han Yueli said coldly. She knew that once the frost entered her body, she would lose her life. Why would she care about pills? You don't have much time left? The frost in your body isn't incurable. If we can find the right spiritual medicine, it will be enough to dispel the frost poison in your body. Chu Fengmian frowned when he heard Han Yueli's words. He wasn't lying to Han Yueli, but Han Yueli didn't believe him. No one in the 9 realms could cure the frost in her body, but Chu Fengmian was different. The Ice Lotus Sword art was created by Chu Fengmian's 4th senior sister, so Chu Fengmian was very familiar with it. He had even practiced a few moves. Therefore, if there was anyone in the 9 realms who had the best chance of saving Han Yueli, it would be Chu Fengmian. You don't have to lie to me. I'm already satisfied that you've allowed me to live for another month and a half. Han Yueli said in a low voice, her voice as calm as ever. Her heart was dead. Right now, Han Yueli's heart was already in a state of near death. There was no fluctuation. Even she herself did not feel that there was any hope. Lie to you? If we can really find a fire-type sacred medicine, the little cold poison in your body will be neutralized in an instant. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. Although the cold poison was difficult to deal with, it wasn't truly incurable. The cold poison could eventually be neutralized. It was just that ordinary spiritual herbs had no effect on the cold poison. Fire-type sage medicines are hard to come by, but it's not impossible to find them in Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure storehouse. Grand Emperor Richlush was a very important person in the 9 realms, so it's possible to find some in his tomb. Chu Fengmian said. These words made Han Yueli's eyes flash with a trace of expectation. Is what you said true? Han Yueli asked in disbelief. In the countless ancient books that she had read, there was only death when the cold energy entered the body. No one had ever said that there was a cure for the cold energy. Of course it's true, Chu Fengmian said confidently. I, Chu Fengmian, have never lied to anyone in my life, much less a woman. In response to Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli's expression flickered, and she didn't look as calm as she had moments before. Chu Fengmian breathed a sigh of relief, although inwardly, he was sighing. He really hadn't lied to Han Yueli. If he could find a fire-type sage medicine, then he really could neutralize the cold poison in Han Yueli. Unfortunately, fire-type sage medicines weren't as easy to find as Chu Fengmian had said. At the very least, the chances of finding one were slim. Sage medicines were the pinnacle of spirit medicines in the 9 realms. Even a former lord of the Sword Dao would have a hard time finding one. Every single sage medicine that appeared in the 9 realms was enough to cause a reign of terror. It was enough to cause the 7 great sects to go to war over it. Even sages would perish in the process. It wasn't that simple to find a sage medicine. Considering how strong Grand Emperor Richlush had been when he was alive, he might have been able to find one, but the chances were less than 1 in 100. Furthermore, if a paragon had found a sage medicine, he would have refined it as quickly as he could. How could he possibly have left it behind? Although Chu Fengmian had been lying to Han Yueli, he didn't want to disappoint the Han Yueli. Let's keep going, Chu Fengmian said. We'll find Grand Emperor Richlush's true treasure in the depths of the tomb. Looking at Han Yueli, Chu Fengmian reached out and grabbed Han Yueli's arm. Then he activated his movement technique again and continued to move through the tomb. It was obvious that Grand Emperor Richlush had distributed his wealth among the countless other rooms in the necropolis of Grand Emperor Richlush. The more stone rooms they found, the more wealth they could obtain. Chu Fengmian followed the Richlush stele as he headed deeper into the tomb. Along the way, Chu Fengmian broke into all of the rooms and collected all of their treasures, as well as countless medicinal pills and spirit medicines. Of course, the pills and spirit medicines he found were all ordinary items, although they were of a much higher grade than what was available in the outside world. But who was Grand Emperor Richlush? He was so strong that he surpassed the god power level and was even stronger than a sage. How could the treasures he had left behind be ordinary? Most likely, they were just a small portion of the treasure trove. The true treasure trove lay in the depths of the tomb. Clutching Hanueli tightly, Chu Fumian continued onward for about 6 hours, covering a distance of 500 kilometers. There are fewer and fewer forks in this area, Chu Fumian murmured. It seems we're close to the heart of the tomb. Chu Fumian glanced around and muttered to himself. Of the countless forks in the path, there was only one that led to the true treasure trove. Chu Fumian had the rich lush steel to guide him, so there was no way he would take the wrong path. However, Chu Fumian sensed some other auras, as well as some footprints. Grand Emperor Richlush's tomb had only recently been opened, so there was no way that these footprints could have been left behind in the past. What's wrong? Hanueli asked, noticing that Chu Fumian had stopped in his tracks. Someone's been here, Chu Fumian said. Someone came, Chu Fumian said. It seemed that a portion of the countless warriors had accidentally stumbled onto the correct route. That wasn't good news. If someone really did find the treasure trove of Grand Emperor Richlush before Chu Fumian, everything Chu Fumian had done so far would be for naught. Chapter 189. Time was of the essence, and Chu Fumian didn't waste any time. Grabbing Hanueli in his arms, he turned into a beam of light that shot into the depths of the tomb. After running for over 1,000 kilometers, Chu Fumian finally saw a huge door standing at the edge of the wall in front of him. The warding spells on the door had already been broken, and behind it was a treasure trove filled with countless medicinal pills and spirit medicines. 2 martial artists were inside, furiously collecting the treasures. There's so much treasure here. There must be tens of millions of energy convergence pills here. Those are all gold spirit pills. A single one of them is worth 100 energy convergence pills. They're considered high-grade pills even in the 9 realms. There are tens of thousands of them here. And there are countless spirit items in here as well. All of them are celestial-grade spirit items. All of this wealth belongs to us. Once we get out of here, young Sir Flame South, Chu Ning, and Chung Tiankong won't be a match for us. Chu Fumian could hear the conversation going on in the stone chamber. It seems that the treasures in this stone room have already been taken away by someone. Looking around, Chu Fumian could see that the treasure trove contained only gold spirit pills and ordinary spirit medicines. Although they were valuable, Chu Fumian didn't want to waste time on them. Let's go. Chu Fumian made a prompt decision. His figure moved as he prepared to continue walking into the depths of the mausoleum. What he needed was the true treasure trove of Grand Emperor Richlush. Although the treasures in the stone chamber were also valuable, they weren't even worth 1/100th of the true treasure trove. Someone's coming. Stop right there. Just as Chu Fumian was about to leave, the 2 figures suddenly sensed Chu Fumian's existence. They immediately rushed out of the stone room and blocked Chu Fumian's path. Oh, 2 divine sea-level punks? One of them looked Chu Fumian and Hanueli up and down. It seems the tomb of Grand Emperor Richlush was broken into, and a bunch of divine sea-level punks snuck in to fish in troubled waters. Hand over the treasure trove you got, boy. Chu Fumian frowned. He wasn't in the mood to tangle with these 2 people, but he didn't expect that these 2 people would come looking for him. Chu Fumian, these 2 are disciples of the Eelist sect, Feng Yuanli and Feng Heyu. Although they are not as strong as Feng Heyu, they're still martial artists of the first level of the Imperial Wind Realm. They're not easy to deal with. Hanueli's expression revealed a hint of nervousness. The 2 wind-resisting realm martial artists were definitely 2 great troubles. Oh, Feng Yuanli, Feng Heyu? Chu Fumian muttered to himself. These 2 names were also the 2 core disciples of the Eelist sect. They were in the wind-controlling realm. It was no wonder that they were so arrogant and wanted Chu Fengmian to hand over all his wealth. Since you know who the two of us are, you should also know. Hand over your wealth, and the two of us can spare your life and let you leave this tomb alive," said Feng Yuanli arrogantly when he heard Chu Fengmian's muttering. The meaning behind his words was that he didn't put Chu Fengmian in his eyes. The two divine Sea Realm martial artists were like ants in his eyes. "You are Han Yueli?" Suddenly, Feng Heiyu, who was at the side, spoke. His eyes stared at Han Yueli in Chu Fengmian's arms, and he seemed to have recognized her. "What's wrong? The fairy of the cold snow pavilion is also lacking a man, lying in the arms of a man," said Feng Heiyu sarcastically. His words were full of sarcasm. The disciples of the cold snow pavilion had always been noble and arrogant. Unless they were married, they wouldn't have any contact with men. Han Yueli was the #1 beauty of the victorious martial country, and she had never looked at anyone well. Seeing Han Yueli in Chu Fengmian's arms, Feng Heiyu's eyes revealed a hint of lust. "So you're seriously injured and can't use your spiritual power. No wonder you need a man. But it is a pity to find a divine Sea Realm martial artist to protect you. How about this? Han Yueli, if you follow the two of us, you will be much stronger than following this divine Sea Realm trash. We will also give you 10% of the treasures in this tomb. How about it?" said Feng Heiyu with a lewd smile. Suddenly, he reached out his hand and grabbed Han Yueli in Chu Fengmian's arms. "You are courting death." Chu Fengmian's face was cold as he snorted. "Two pieces of trash, how dare you attack me? It seems like the two of you want to die today." Chu Fengmian wasn't interested in attacking these two, but since they were so aggressive, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid of them. "Trash? You're just a divine Sea Realm martial artist. How arrogant." Feng Heiyu's face turned cold when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. "Die for me." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly attacked. A black hurricane suddenly appeared in front of Feng Heiyu. This black hurricane seemed to contain a disastrous power that could destroy all living things in it. Be careful. This is Feng Heiyu's signature skill, Hurricane of Calamity. It can absorb the spiritual energy of other martial artists. Ordinary martial artists will lose half of their spiritual energy when they come into contact with this Hurricane of Calamity. Han Yueli hurriedly warned, "Hurricane of Calamity? How dare you call it calamity with such a small skill?" Chu Fengmian sneered. He jumped up high with Han Yueli in his left hand. Suddenly, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched towards the Hurricane of Calamity. Boom! With a loud sound, Chu Fengmian's punch shattered the Hurricane of Calamity. What? Feng Yuanli was shocked when he saw this scene. Even a wind-controlling realm martial artist would suffer in front of Feng Heiyu's Hurricane of Calamity. Now, Chu Fengmian, with his divine sea realm cultivation, could shatter it with a single punch. This was simply beyond their expectations. This kid's strength is strange. Let's attack together and kill him first. We will extract his soul and find out where his strength comes from. Feng Yuanli's voice was filled with killing intent. He moved and stood beside Feng Heiyu. The two of them attacked Chu Fengmian at the same time. Two martial skills were used to attack him. Trash will always be trash. Even if two trash work together, it's meaningless. Chu Fengmian sneered. Suddenly, an enormous amount of spiritual energy condensed on his body. A stone tablet suddenly enlarged in Chu Fengmian's palm. The power of this rich, lush monument will be tested by the two of you. Chapter 190. Ever since Chu Fengmian had stepped into the Spirit Sea realm and was able to use the rich, lush steel, Chu Fengmian had yet to make a move. Although each activation of the richly lush steel required an astronomical amount of 100,000 energy-amassing pills, it was still not enough. But now, Chu Fengmian had obtained quite a few golden spirit pills from the numerous stone chambers in the mausoleum. After conversion, he had about 5 to 6 million chi-amassing pills. Such wealth was more than enough for Chu Fengmian to use to activate the rich, lush steel. Chu Fengmian had always wanted to find someone to test out the power of the abundant, lush tombstone. Now that Feng Yuanli and Feng Black Prison had come knocking on his door, Chu Fengmian decided to give it a try. What kind of spiritual weapon is this? What a powerful spiritual energy. This spiritual energy is even more powerful than our Aeolus Sex spiritual weapon, the immortal wind jade pendant. Could it be a heavenly level spiritual weapon? When Feng Yuanli and Feng Heiyu saw the abundant lush monument in Chu Fengmian's hand, their eyes filled with greed. Not even the kingdom of martial victory had a heavenly class spirit item. Anyone who got it would have a meteoric rise and would have access to the necropolis of Grand Emperor Rich Lush. Once we kill this brat, this spirit tool will be ours. This brat is only at the Divine Sea realm. He can't unleash the power of a heaven-grade spirit artifact at all. With a furious roar, Feng Heiyu rushed toward Chu Fengmian with boundless spiritual energy. Oof! With a cold snort, Chu Fengmian sent the rich lush tombstone descending, causing everything in the area to tremble violently. A thunderous boom suddenly rang out as the power of the richly lush steel was unleashed. Both Feng Heiyu and Feng Yuanli's bodies were shattered in an instant. Boom, 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 boom. Intense rumbling sounds echoed out, causing Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum to tremble. Feng Heiyu and Feng Yuanli were both in the wind control realm, yet they couldn't even withstand a single blow from the Rich Lush steel. It is indeed a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. With such power, I'm afraid it is enough to contend with a martial artist at the 7th or 8th level of the Imperial Wind Realm. Chu Fengmian exclaimed when he sensed the terrifying power of the abundant lush steel. Considering Chu Fengmian's current level of strength, he didn't even need to use the rich lush steel to kill Feng Blackprison and Feng Yuanli. However, there was no way Chu Fengmian could do such a thing. It was as if the richly lush monument had attacked, instantly killing the two of them. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian could sense that the rich lush steel hadn't even used a tenth of its full power, and that was enough to kill the two of them. The rest of the power was focused on Grand Emperor Rich Lush's tomb. That was why Grand Emperor Rich Lush's mausoleum was shaking so violently. That's not even a tenth of the rich lush steel's power. If you can step into the Imperial Wind Realm and become as strong as a saint, then you'll be able to use the full power of the rich lush steel. At that time, even those saints won't be your match, Xing Xian said in Chu Fengmian's mind. Clearly, he was displeased that Chu Fengmian had underestimated the power of the richly lush steel. 1/10 of my power. Chu Fengmian was well aware that, given his current level of strength, he couldn't possibly use the full power of the rich lush steel. Even so, 1/10 of its power was already terrifying enough. If he could use the full power of the rich lush steel, how strong would he be? Heavenly grade spirit treasures were truly terrifying. Chu Fengmian, this is? Han Yueli said, a look of shock on his face as he watched Chu Fengmian kill Feng Yuanli and Feng Blackjail. Those two were by no means nameless. They were conclave disciples of the Aeolus sect, and there were no more than 10 of them. Considering their strength, they were definitely in the top 50 of the younger generation of geniuses in the nation of victorious martial. They were figures that countless martial artists worshipped, and yet they hadn't even been able to withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian. He's really getting stronger and stronger. Before, when he was only in the body-tempering realm, he could already kill Yin Xian, who was at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm. Now that he's in the Spirit Sea realm, he can even kill an Imperial Wind Realm cultivator with ease. Han Yueli was more and more shaken than ever. The word genius was no longer enough to describe Chu Fengmian. Genius, freakish freak, genius. None of those words could be used to describe Chu Fengmian. Even the Crown Prince, the #1 genius of the nation of victorious martial, was nothing compared to Chu Fengmian. Han Yueli had the feeling that if Chu Fengmian was given more time, no one in the nation of victorious martial would be a match for him. That wasn't a delusion. It had only been a month since Chu Fengmian had entered the Institute of Victorious Martial. And yet, that was enough time for him to reach such a terrifying level. Given another year, or two, Chu Fengmian would probably be a great sage. It was a terrifying level of talent that Han Yueli couldn't even begin to imagine. In fact, none of the geniuses recorded in the ancient records of the Institute of Victorious Martial or even the founder of the nation of victorious Marshall, Grand Emperor Richlush, had ever been this terrifying. Your spirit item? Han Yueli asked hesitantly. One of the main reasons Chu Fengmian had been able to kill Feng Yuanli and Feng Blackjail was because of his stone steel. It was so terrifying that not even the 9 Frigid Plum Sword, a spirit item from the Spell Formation Division of the Frigid Snow Pavilion, could compare to it. That stone steel is a spirit item personally created by Grand Emperor Richlush. It's called the Richlush Steel. Chu Fengmian scanned the area with his divine sense and was certain that no one was around. The only reason I was able to bring you to this tomb is because of this spirit item. Chu Fengmian didn't feel the need to hide anything from Han Yueli. After all, Han Yueli already knew most of his secrets. From his medicine concocting skills to his sword will, if Han Yueli were to reveal any of them, it would be a huge problem for Chu Fengmian. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't feel the need to hide anything. Furthermore, he was confident that Han Yueli wouldn't reveal anything about it. The rich, lush steel? No wonder you were able to get through the tomb without any hindrance. So, you're the true successor of Grand Emperor Richlush. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli said in a low voice. According to the rumors, whoever acquired the Richlush steel would receive the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush and would become his successor. Han Yueli wasn't too surprised to hear that Chu Fengmian had the Richlush steel. After all, the only reason Chu Fengmian had been able to bring her into the tomb without any hindrance was because he had the Richlush steel. Chapter 191. The successor of Grand Emperor Richlush? Even if you get the Richlush steel, you might not necessarily become his successor. A cold smile appeared in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Whoever got the Richlush steel would get the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush. If that were the case, then the restrictive spells on the mausoleum wouldn't have disappeared. With them gone, any martial artist would have a chance to enter the mausoleum and fight for the legacy. Getting the Richlush steel was just a way to make the first move. Who would get the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush would depend on how strong they were. Now that Feng Darkhel and Feng Yuanli were dead, all of the treasures in the stone chamber were in Chu Fengmian's possession. Chu Fengmian didn't hold back. Waving his hand, he pulled out countless spirit medicines and spirit pills, which he stuffed into his bag of holding. Chu Fengmian already had the projection of the ancient war dragon inside of him, and now he had the Richlush steel. Although the Richlush steel was incredibly powerful, it still cost 100,000 energy convergence pills to use. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Fengmian had acquired quite a bit of wealth, he probably wouldn't even have been able to afford it. Therefore, Chu Fengmian wasn't going to hold back. He wanted as much wealth as he could get. In the depths of the treasure trove were 17 spirit items, all of which Chu Fengmian had already extracted. The engravings on the spirit items, as well as the materials used to make them, were all very similar. It was almost as if they were a set of spirit items. These 17 spiritual weapons were all middle-grade, profound-level spiritual weapons. But Chu Fengmian found that the combined power of these 17 spiritual weapons was enough to reach the power of an earthly-level spiritual weapon. In fact, they weren't even inferior to the Scarlet Flame Sword, which Chu Fengmian hadn't forged yet. Although the amount of spiritual power required to use the 17 spirit items was shocking, a full set of spirit items that could rival an Earth-class spirit item would still be worth a fortune. To Wind Rider realm martial artists, and even saints, they would be incredibly valuable. This set of spirit items could be sold for a good price. Chu Fengmian chuckled. This set of spirit weapons was not very useful to Chu Fengmian. Now that Chu Fengmian had the Scarlet Flame Sword, its power was much stronger than this set of spirit weapons. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian had yet to fully control the Richlush tombstone. Spirit weapons were things that Chu Fengmian didn't have much use for now. In addition, Chu Fengmian had also obtained close to 60,000 golden spirit pills and countless spiritual herbs. In addition to the golden spirit pills that Chu Fengmian had collected along the way, Chu Fengmian had a total of 100,000 golden spirit pills. It was worth 10 million energy convergence pills. Just by coming to the tomb and not finding any real treasure, it was enough to make a fortune of 10 million energy convergence pills. Grand Emperor Richlush's mausoleum was truly a treasure trove. "Let's go," Yang Qi said. "It seems the only way to find that fire-type holy medicine is in Grand Emperor Richlush's treasure trove." Chu Fengmian said. If Grand Emperor Richlush had left behind a sage panacea of fire-type medicine, it would definitely be in one of his most important treasure troves. As far as Chu Fengmian could tell, these stone chambers had been prepared as gifts for the challengers. The real treasure trove was even deeper, and Chu Fengmian hadn't even acquired 1% of the treasure trove. "Let's go." Holding Han Yueli in his arms, Chu Fengmian once again drew on his movement technique and headed deeper into the mausoleum. This time, they walked for over 1,000 miles, but they didn't come across any stone chambers or forks in the path. Chu Fengmian could sense that there were very few forks in the path, and it seemed to him that these were the only ones that led deeper into the mausoleum. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in front of them. Behind the light, many voices could be heard. "What the hell is this place? I can't even use spirit power here. This must be the place where Grand Emperor Richlush set up his tests. I wonder who's going to get the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush." According to the stories, he surpassed the great sage level. Whoever gets his legacy will definitely be a great sage in the future. All of a sudden, the sounds of conversation could be heard. Chu Fengmian blurred into motion and entered the mausoleum. "Someone else is coming." Oh, two people actually came at the same time. Seeing Chu Fengmian's figure appear, these voices all revealed a bit of surprise. At the end of the mausoleum was an enormous dimension, and as soon as Chu Fengmian entered, he could sense that his spirit power was being suppressed, making it impossible for him to use it. There were a total of 3 people in the mausoleum. 2 of them were people Chu Fengmian had seen before. One was young Sir Flame South, and the other was a holy child. One of them was young Sir Flame South, the one who had tried to divine Chu Fengmian's location, only to be attacked by Chu Fengmian's power. The other was the holy child of the black market, the one who had tried to enslave Chu Fengmian back at the entrance to the holy land of the black market. From the looks of it, this was where the final test for the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush would take place. Grand Emperor Richlush was a person who surpassed the great sage level. Even after his death, he was still able to plan for the next 1,000 years. Anyone who wanted to acquire his legacy would have to pass the test he had set up. The mausoleum was actually part of his plan. He wanted to attract martial artists to complete the test he had set up. "I can't believe it's you," young Sir Flame South said, looking at Chu Fengmian with a cold expression. He recognized Chu Fengmian as the man who had killed Yin Xian, the man with the crimson flame sword. Young Sir Flame South had tried to divine Chu Fengmian's location, only to be attacked by Chu Fengmian's power and injured. He would never forget that grudge. "That's right." Chu Fengmian looked at young Sir Flame South with a mocking smile. "It seems young Sir Flame South has a good memory. I can't believe you still remember me. What's going on? Does Brother Flame South have a grudge with him?" Another person standing at the side asked. Chu Fengmian had never seen this person before. However, he was no weaker than young Sir Flame South in terms of strength. At the very least, he was one of the top disciples of the 4 great sections. "That's the eldest disciple of the 3 Immortals Island, Fong Pakshuan," Han Yueli whispered into Chu Fengmian's ear. Chapter 192. A disciple of the 3 Immortal Island. Hearing Han Yueli's words, Chu Fengmian sized up Fong Pakshuan. Among the 4 great sects, the 3 Immortal Island didn't have many grudges. Most of the disciples of the 3 Immortal Island were apathetic, so they rarely moved around in Wusheng country. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't recognize the eldest disciple of the 3 Immortal Island, Fong Pakshuan. However, from Han Yueli's words, Chu Fengmian could tell that Fong Pakshuan wasn't apathetic like the other disciples of the 3 Immortal Island. It was the first time Chu Fengmian heard such an evaluation from Han Yueli. "Brother Fong, I believe that you also know that our Candle Flame sect's newcomer king this year, Yin Xian, has been killed." Young Master Yin Nan coldly snorted and pointed at Chu Fengmian. "This brat is the one who killed Yin Xian and stole one of the 3 divine weapons of our Candle Flame sect, the Scarlet Flame Sword. If we don't kill him today, where will our Candle Flame sect's face go?" "Oh, There's such a thing? Fong Pakxuan's eyes revealed a pensive expression, and he suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian. Wu Sheng Academy. The four great sects should be united. We can't always have internal conflicts. Chu Fengmian, how about this? Although you killed Yin Xian, the dead can't come back to life. This matter is in the past. Now, as long as you return the Scarlet Flame sword to young Master Yin Nan, the grudges between you and the Candle Flame sect will be over. After all, the Scarlet Flame sword is one of the 3 divine weapons of the Candle Flame sect. It will inevitably cause trouble for an outsider like you. Returning it to the Candle Flame sect can be considered as resolving this grudge. What do you think? Fong Pakxuan's words were righteous. It sounded like he was persuading Chu Fengmian, but the meaning behind his words was that he wanted Chu Fengmian to hand over the Scarlet Flame sword for free. With such a righteous attitude, it seemed like he was helping Chu Fengmian by asking Chu Fengmian to hand over the Scarlet Flame sword for free. Sanctimonious, this word was perfect for Fong Pakxuan. Haha. Hearing Fong Pakxuan's words, Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. Of course I don't agree. You want me to hand over the Scarlet Flame sword? In your dreams. Steal? I obtained this Scarlet Flame sword from a traitor of your Candle Flame sect. I helped you kill the traitor. In the end, you should be thanking me. As for Yin Xian, that trash wanted to kill me. Instead, he was killed by me. His skill is inferior. Your Candle Flame sect must be ashamed to have such a trash as your newcomer king. Killing him can be considered as me cleaning up your Candle Flame sect's mess. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Fong Pakxuan's face was filled with anger. It seemed that he didn't expect Chu Fengmian to not give him any face and directly refute his words. There's no need to get angry, Brother Fong. Fong Chi said, there's no need to reason with this brat. Once the trial is over, I'll kill him first. Young Master Yin Nan's face revealed killing intent. Killing Yin Xian was something that young Master Yin Nan didn't care about. But Chu Fengmian had the Scarlet Flame sword. The Scarlet Flame sword was one of the 3 divine weapons of the Candle Flame sect. If outsiders were to know that the Scarlet Flame sword was in Chu Fengmian's hands, they would be furious. If word got out that Chu Fengmian knew about it, the Candle Flame sect would lose all face. Ha. If you want to kill this brat, count me in. The Holy Sun at the side suddenly said coldly. When he opened his mouth, his voice was also filled with killing intent. Oh, Holy Sun, do you have a grudge with him? Fong Pakxuan asked curiously. He knew a bit about the grudge between Chu Fengmian and young Master Yin Nan, but he hadn't heard anything about the Holy Sun. Of course, this brat rejected the invitation of the black market. He slapped us in the face. If he doesn't die, how am I supposed to establish my authority in the black market? The Holy Sun chuckled coldly as he looked at Chu Fengmian. When the Shengzi spoke, the Killing Heart demon art was even more refined than before. He had broken through to the peak of the Divine Sea realm and officially stepped into the wind-controlling realm. Every word of the Holy Sun carried a heart devil that could break one's heartstrings. The martial artists present were all experts and wouldn't be affected. However, if some Divine Sea realm martial artists were to come, they would probably be afflicted with inner demons after hearing the saint words. Whoever wants to kill me, I'll accompany you anytime. Chu Fengmian sneered. He was too lazy to compete with the Holy Sun. Now that he had broken through to the Divine Sea realm, he could use the abundant lush monument. Even if he had to fight young Master Yin Nan and the Holy Sun, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid. While the 3 of them were conversing, another 2 figures walked out of the cave. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent the moment he saw the 2 figures. He muttered to himself in a low voice, enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. These 2 figures were the ones who had chased Chu Fengmian and forced him to escape into the tomb. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong. The moment they saw Chu Fengmian, their eyes were first filled with surprise, then a strong killing intent. Kid, you're still alive. Chu Ning's eyes turned cold when he saw Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, he wanted to use his spiritual energy to rush at Chu Fengmian. Very well, I'll kill you again today. However, his figure remained standing where he was motionless. In the examination grounds, no martial artist could use their spiritual energy. What's going on? Why is my spiritual energy sealed? Chu Ning frowned. He suddenly felt that although he could feel the spiritual energy in his body, he couldn't use it at all. It was as if it was sealed by a force. Brother Chu, don't waste your energy. In the examination grounds, you can't use your spiritual energy. Fong Pakshuan looked at Chu Ning and said with a smile, Fong Pakshuan, you're here too. Only then did Chu Ning notice Fong Pakshuan's presence. He glanced at the others. Young Master Yin Nan, Holy Son, Hanueli, looks like we're not the only ones who can participate in the inheritance examination. Young Master Yin Nan looked at Chu Ning and sneered. Chu Ning, you're not the only one who wants to kill that kid. That's right, we all want to kill him. The Holy Son said. Among the people present, except for Hanueli and Fong Pakshuan, the other four saw Chu Fengyan as their mortal enemy and wanted to kill him. This scene was extremely strange. Chapter 193. It was impossible to use spiritual energy in the legacy grounds. None of the others said anything else. In the end, there was no point in trying to talk back. It seems that Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong still want the richly lush steel. They didn't tell anyone that I have it. Chu Fengyan thought to himself. No one present knew that Chu Fengyan had the richly lush steel. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong didn't seem to want to tell anyone either. It seemed that they still wanted the richly lush steel. That was why they didn't spread the news. With Chu Fengyan's current strength and the richly lush steel, even if he wasn't invincible in the Holy Land, he was still confident that he could take on anyone and escape unscathed. But if the news spread that Chu Fengyan had the richly lush steel, it would be extremely troublesome. After all, the richly lush steel didn't just represent the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush. It was also a powerful heavenly spiritual treasure. If word got out, it would cause endless trouble. Chu Ning and Cheng Tiankong wanted to take the richly lush steel from Chu Fengyan. That would help Chu Fengyan keep the secret. Someone else is coming. Young Master Yin Nan suddenly spoke out. Another white figure suddenly rushed out of the cave. Hanueli hurriedly called out when she saw the white figure. Senior sister Mo, the instant she finished speaking, Hanueli whispered into Chu Fengyan's ear. This is Mo Ruoxue, my senior sister. She's the number one disciple of the younger generation in the frigid snow pavilion. Oh, junior sister Han, you're here too? Seeing Hanueli, the white figure was slightly surprised. But when she saw Chu Fengyan, who was supporting Hanueli, she couldn't help but frown. A hint of hostility appeared in her eyes, but it quickly calmed down. It only lasted for a moment, but Chu Fengyan still caught it. Does Mo Ruoxue have a grudge against me? Chu Fengyan was a little surprised. This should be the first time he met Mo Ruoxue. Why would Mo Ruoxue be so hostile towards him? But even if there was some hostility, Chu Fengyan was not interested in arguing with Mo Ruoxue. As long as she did not cause trouble for Chu Fengyan, he was too lazy to care. How did your body suffer from such a serious cold poison? Mo Ruoxue observed Hanueli for a moment and suddenly understood why Hanueli was being supported by Chu Fengyan. Right now, Hanueli's body was filled with cold poison and his body was incomparably weak. Without Chu Fengyan's support, even standing up would be extremely difficult for him. No wonder you need to borrow the strength of others. So it turns out that you've been afflicted with such a serious cold poison. However, there's no need to be afraid. Once we leave the Holy Land and return to the sect, there will definitely be a way to cure your cold poison. Mo Ruoxue said calmly as she looked at Chu Fengyan. Since I'm here, it's better for me to take care of junior sister Han so that no one can take the opportunity to cause trouble. Mo Ruoxue said indifferently, but there was not the slightest hint of gratitude in her words. On the contrary, the last sentence was filled with sarcasm. This made Chu Fengyan's face involuntarily turn colder. He was indeed not interested in being entangled with Mo Ruoxue, but her words were filled with sarcasm. Chu Fengyan was not someone to be trifled with. You'll take care of her? If you take care of her, I'm afraid she won't even live for 3 days before the cold energy enters her body and dies. Chu Fengyan sneered. What qualifications do you have? What? A little fellow with such a big tone. I'm not qualified to take care of her? It's just cold poison. Our cold snow pavilion has many ways to deal with it. Hearing Chu Fumian's words, Mo Ruashua looked at Han Yueli and said, "Come with me. I'll take care of you. Don't listen to this brat's threats. He just wants to use this opportunity to get close to you." Junior sister appreciates senior sister Mo's good intentions. Han Yueli glanced at Mo Ruashua and said, although he didn't say it out loud, everyone could tell from his attitude. Chu Fumian's words were not wrong. He had saved Han Yueli's life. Now, the pills that could suppress the cold poison in Han Yueli's body were all personally refined by Chu Fumian. In less than 3 days, Chu Fumian had to use his sword intent to devour the cold poison in her body. Once she left Chu Fumian for 3 days, Han Yueli would undoubtedly die. Junior sister Han, Mo Ruashua, did not expect such an answer. She wanted to continue speaking, but Han Yueli spoke first. "Thank you for your kindness, senior sister." Humph. Hearing Han Yueli's resolute words, Mo Ruashua had nothing to say. She looked at Chu Fumian and said coldly, "Brat, although I don't know what methods you use to make Junior Sister Han listen to you, you have to understand that Junior Sister Han is not someone you can get close to. Let me give you a word of advice. Quickly leave obediently, lest you get killed." The last sentence was a blatant threat. Hearing this, a trace of killing intent flashed across Chu Fumian's eyes. Chu Fumian, hated being threatened by others the most. But this killing intent was forcibly suppressed by Chu Fumian. "Then there's no need to trouble Fairy Mo," Chu Fumian said calmly, as if he did not take her words seriously. "Why hasn't the land of inheritance opened yet?" Young Lord Yannan said. His tone was already somewhat impatient. Right now, they had already waited here for half a day. "It should be soon," Chu Fumian muttered to himself. He had already sensed that the aura in the tomb had mostly disappeared. Those people should not be qualified to come to the land of inheritance. They had all been selected by some mysterious force to be able to enter the land of inheritance. The test for the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush had begun as soon as they had entered the tomb. Those who did not qualify would be given some treasures and then left, such as the stone chambers outside. As for those who were truly qualified, they were all gathered here. Rumble. Just as the last of the aura disappeared from the tomb, a huge rumbling sound rang out. A stone bridge suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. An old man was standing on top of the stone bridge. Chapter 194. Grand Emperor Richlush. Everyone present couldn't help but gulp at the sight of the old man. The old man's aura was enough to recognize his identity at a glance. Grand Emperor Richlush. Only the founding monarch of the victorious warrior nation would have such a noble aura. Even if the king of the victorious martial nation were to come, he would not be able to compare to this old man. In all of the history of the victorious warrior nation, he was the only one who could have such an aura. What's going on? Don't tell me Grand Emperor Richlush isn't dead? Then what's going on with this tomb and his legacy? Cries of astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Grand Emperor Richlush had been dead for 1,000 years, a fact that everyone in the victorious warrior nation knew. The truth was that they had come here to acquire the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush. But now, Grand Emperor Richlush was here. What exactly was going on here? Of all the people present, only Chu Fengmian remained completely calm. Yang Qi could tell that this Grand Emperor Richlush wasn't actually a living person. He was something like the Blue Luan, a projection of a soul that had been left behind in the past. For example, an ordinary saint could leave behind a lifelike shadow, but this shadow could only last for a few minutes at most. But this projection of Grand Emperor Richlush had existed for 1,000 years, which was terrifying to say the least. Grand Emperor Richlush's power was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. "I perished long ago," Grand Emperor Richlush said calmly. "The present me is nothing more than a projection." Grand Emperor Richlush stood at the head of the bridge, overhearing the discussions. A projection? What? This Grand Emperor Richlush is nothing more than a projection? Young Sir Flame South Flame and Fong Pachuan were both shocked. The strength of a phantom is actually comparable to a saint. Is this really something a warrior can do? Everyone present could sense that this projection of Grand Emperor Richlush was a level of power that surpassed all of them. Everyone present was close to the peak of the wind control realm, so they all knew what that meant. God power level. Saints, if this shadowy figure was as strong as a sage, then how strong must Grand Emperor Richlush have been when he was alive? Upon thinking that it was the inheritance left behind by such a terrifying existence, the crowd's eyes became incomparably fiery. Anyone who got the legacy of Grand Emperor Richlush would be considered a tyrant in the kingdom of martial victories. The test I left behind is very simple. Grand Emperor Richlush pointed at the stone bridge beneath his feet. The stone bridge before us is the first test. Whoever is able to cross this stone bridge will pass this king's test. That person will be able to choose any item from this king's treasure. They crossed the stone bridge. The stone bridge beneath Grand Emperor Richlush's feet was only about 300 meters wide, which was a distance that martial artists could cross in the blink of an eye. However, everyone present knew that the test would definitely not be that simple. There must be something mysterious about this stone bridge. Grand Emperor Richlush's test wasn't something that could be easily passed. Although it was only the first test, everyone had to be very careful. Once you step onto the stone bridge, there's a chance that you will die. Think carefully. I'll be waiting for you at the next test. I hope you don't disappoint me. With that, Grand Emperor Richlush vanished from the bridge, leaving behind only the stone bridge. Danger? How could a test like this not be dangerous? The Holy Sun looked at the stone bridge and snorted coldly. I'll be taking my leave first. With a leap, he stepped onto the stone bridge. The moment the Chosen stepped onto the stone bridge, his figure disappeared. Everyone present could no longer sense the Holy Sun's aura. It was as if he had disappeared without a trace. So, there's something mysterious about this stone bridge. None of them were surprised to see that. If you're afraid of danger, then what's the point of cultivating the Tao of martial victories? I'll go too. With a cold snort, young Lord Flaminin leaped onto the stone bridge as well. Chu Ning and Chung Tiankong did the same, stepping onto the stone bridge. All of the martial artists here were super geniuses from the victorious martial nation. They were the cream of the crop of the younger generation. So how could they possibly be afraid of such danger? Before long, everyone was on the bridge, leaving only Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli behind. You should go too. Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengmian and said in a low voice. Now that she had lost her spiritual power, it was only natural that she couldn't participate in the test. In fact, Chu Fengmian had brought Han Yueli all the way here. Of all the people present, she was the only one who couldn't participate. Now that Han Yueli was left behind, without her spiritual power, it was very likely that she would be in danger. Because of that, Chu Fengmian hesitated. He wasn't worried about the dangers of the test, but rather about Han Yueli's safety. Senior. Chu Fengmian looked at the edge of the bridge. Junior has a request, and I hope Senior can fulfill it. You can see my figure? Chu Fengmian spoke for a long time before a voice suddenly came from the edge of the stone bridge. Grand Emperor Richlush appeared, looking curiously at Chu Fengmian. Although he had said that he would leave, he had actually concealed himself and stood off to the side to observe. Normally speaking, not even a saint would be able to see through his concealment. But now, Chu Fengmian had seen through him. Grand Emperor Richlush looked curiously at Chu Fengmian, who had taken his Richlush steel. What request? Grand Emperor Richlush said calmly. You might have the Richlush steel, but if you want to take my legacy directly, there's no way. You have to pass the test to get my legacy. The same goes for you. Chu Fengmian said respectfully. Senior, I hope you can keep her safe in the meantime. You? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Han Yueli's eyes widened in disbelief. Never could she have guessed that Chu Fengmian would ask Grand Emperor Richlush for her sake. After all, if Grand Emperor Richlush wasn't in a good mood, Chu Fengmian would never be able to get his legacy. In fact, Grand Emperor Richlush might even kill him. The more powerful a person was, the more temperamental they were. It wasn't impossible for something like that to happen. Oh, so she's the reason you didn't want to get on the bridge. Grand Emperor Richlush looked at Chu Fengmian, then laughed loudly. Chapter 195. Don't worry, go take the test. While you're taking the test, no one will be able to harm a hair on her head. Grand Emperor Richlush laughed heartily. Although this Grand Emperor Richlush was nothing more than a projection, he was still as strong as a sage. With the protection of a sage, no one would be able to harm Han Yueli. Many thanks, Senior. Chu Fengmian hurriedly expressed his thanks. With this, he no longer had to worry about anything. Now, Chu Fengmian could devote himself to the test. Go on, Grand Emperor Richlush said. I have high hopes for you. Grand Emperor Richlush's words seemed to contain a special meaning. You're right. Yes, sir. Chu Fengmian moved his feet and jumped onto the stone bridge in an instant. Just as his feet stepped onto the stone bridge, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt the world spin. Everything in front of him had undergone an earth-shattering change. In front of Chu Fengmian, it suddenly transformed into an incomparably wide grassland. An illusion? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but frown when he saw the scene before him. As soon as he stepped onto the bridge, he found himself in an illusion. Chu Fengmian cast a glance at the illusory realm and saw countless troops appearing in front of him. It was the same army that Grand Emperor Richlush had led when he founded the martial victorious kingdom. At a glance, he could see that there were over 10,000 of them. The first test has a total of 3 stages. The first stage is simple. You just have to kill everyone in front of you. Grand Emperor Richlush's voice echoed out. Kill them, and you'll pass. If you get killed, you'll fail the test. With that, Grand Emperor Richlush's voice faded away, leaving Chu Fengmian alone to face the army of 10,000. This test is simple, Chu Fengmian said. Chu Fengmian sneered as he looked at the 10,000-man army before him. The strongest of these soldiers were in the divine sea level, and the weakest were in the body-tempering level. Many ants could bite an elephant to death. If a martial artist at the peak of the wind-controlling realm came here, it would not be easy for him to face this assessment. However, for Chu Fengmian, who possessed the divine pulse, such an assessment was a piece of cake. The holy vein was enough to provide Chu Fengmian with endless spiritual power, even in the dreamland. He didn't need to worry about the consumption of spiritual power. Kill! Chu Fengmian did not hesitate at all. He picked up the scarlet flame sword and rushed into the crowd. He was not stingy with his spiritual power. He slashed out crazily with his sword. Hiss! 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 Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Chu Fengmian was deep in the midst of the tens of thousands of soldiers. He was calm and unruffled. Every swing of his sword took the lives of at least several soldiers. A copious amount of blood splattered onto Chu Fengmian's body, but Chu Fengmian remained calm and unruffled. Within 2 hours, Chu Fengmian didn't stop to rest. 10,000 soldiers were completely wiped out by Chu Fengmian alone. When Chu Fengmian killed the last soldier, the countless corpses of the soldiers suddenly disappeared. The bloodstains on Chu Fengmian's body also disappeared. Everything that had happened had been an illusion. Now that it was gone, it meant that Chu Fengmian had passed the first trial. Not bad. To be able to complete the first round of the test in 2 hours, this speed is even faster than I expected. Grand Emperor Richlush's voice rang out again. This time, there was a hint of praise in his voice. However, the second trial won't be as easy. Even as the words left his mouth, a white figure appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. This white figure was almost exactly the same as the one Chu Fengmian had seen on the heavenly path. This person is 5 divisions stronger than you, Grand Emperor Richlush said. Defeat him, and you will pass the second trial. 5 divisions stronger than him? That meant that the person in front of him was at least as difficult as the 60th level of the Heavenspan path. Of all the geniuses in the kingdom of victorious martial, less than 5 had ever reached the 60th level of the Heavenspan path. Of course, Chu Fengmian was one of those 5. He had reached the 70th level during the entrance examination. Chu Fengmian was now dozens of times stronger than he had been before. Facing this person in front of him, who was in the 6th stage of the divine sea realm, posed no threat to him at all. Die! Chu Fengmian said, waving his sword, sending out a stream of sword energy that slashed out. The white figure did the same thing as Chu Fengyan. The two streams of sword energy collided, and the white figure was instantly exterminated. As far as Chu Fengyan was concerned, the second trial was as easy as flipping his hand. Could it be that Grand Emperor Richlush intentionally lowered the difficulty so that I could get his legacy? Chu Fengyan couldn't help but wonder. The first two trials were the easiest for Chu Fengyan. The first trial involved exterminating an army of 10,000. To most martial artists, it would have been extremely difficult to pass. But to Chu Fengyan, who had his god meridians, it was a piece of cake. He didn't need to worry about running out of spiritual power. The second trial was like the heaven-span path to heaven. Chu Fengyan's cultivation level was low, which was his biggest disadvantage. But when it came to the heaven-span path, he was blessed by heaven. Because of his ancient battle dragon blood, Chu Fengyan was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than other martial artists in the same cultivation level. Because of that, the second trial was as easy as pie for Chu Fengyan. There were 3 trials in the first trial, and he had no idea what the third trial would be like. The third trial is simple, Grand Emperor Richlush said. Defeat him, and you'll pass the first trial. Grand Emperor Richlush's voice rang out again. This time around, what appeared before Chu Fengyan was an incomparably enormous ancient era's dragon turtle. The appearance of this ancient dragon turtle was the same as the one Chu Fengyan had encountered on the deserted island. What? Chu Fengyan's pupils constricted. He had assumed that Grand Emperor Richlush was taking care of him. But now that he saw the third trial, Chu Fengyan realized that there was no such thing as taking care of him. The true test was at the end. The dragon turtle was at the peak of the Windgate level, and yet he was going to be defeated in the third trial. Phew! Chu Fengyan looked at the dragon turtle for a moment, then breathed a sigh of relief. The dragon turtle was still as strong as it had been 1,000 years ago. Although it was at the peak of the Windgate level, it definitely wasn't half a step into the God Power level. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.